I got hired at a convenience store that sold to fantasy worlds. Then, attractive adult monster women kept coming through my door. On my first overnight shift, I was the only employee from a world without magic, and every species still had to be served. The first one was a horned succubus named Serena, and she collapsed at my register before I even knew what she was. 30 seconds later, a neon pink curse detector flew out of my hand and knocked her flat. I was standing behind the counter at Wayfarer Market, staring at an unconscious adult woman with horns and little bat wings. Store policy said every customer received fair service. It said nothing about accidentally clubbing one with magical equipment. I dropped beside Serena, checked that she was breathing, and called my manager. Holly Fairchild, the young-looking mage who had hired me, answered on the second ring. I told her exactly what happened. She ordered me to check the wand's light. It glowed violet. Holly's voice sharpened. Good, she's alive. Violet means the contamination can be treated. Get the silver packet from the medicine shelf. She was alive. I took the win before the shift found another way to hurt me. My reward was learning I still had to make her swallow something while she was unconscious. To explain why I was desperate enough to keep that job, I had to go back 6 months. To the day my company collapsed. I reached my old office before sunrise and found the lights off, the computers gone, and every executive unreachable. The people who had promised a recovery plan stopped answering calls. My final paycheck never arrived. Coworkers argued beside empty desks while my landlord's reminder glowed on my phone. The company had failed. Rent was still coming. 6 months later, I was unemployed and almost out of money. A cafe manager read my application and said 29 was too old for the shift he wanted. Outside, my next phone bill threatened to empty the account. Rent came after that. I walked home the long way and found a bright convenience store on a corner I used every week. I could not remember seeing it that morning. A sign covered the window. Night clerk wanted. Experience preferred. Age does not matter. I went inside. The woman behind the counter introduced herself as Holly Fairchild, manager of Wayfarer Market. She looked young enough that I asked whether the actual manager was coming. Holly folded her arms. You're looking at her. I apologized and gave her my name, Derek Vaughn. Then Holly heard I had worked convenience store shifts before my office job. She offered a 1-year overnight contract immediately. The wage could cover several months of living expenses. I signed before common sense finished loading. You didn't read every page, Holly said. My rent read the important part. That earned a smile. Holly trained me for 3 hours. Registers, shelves, receipts, medicine. Most of it looked normal. The blood bags and neon pink curse detector did not. During orientation, Holly passed the detector over my arm. It squealed, flashed once, and died. She frowned, called it temperamental, and promised another test later. Near midnight, Holly grabbed her coat. Urgent suppliers might arrive. Suspicious customers still needed proper handling. Then she gave me the rule she assumed I understood. Treat every species fairly. No assumptions based on horns, fur, scales, or teeth. I thought the store had a theme. Before leaving, Holly touched a brass control beneath the counter. Scheduled relocation starts after I lock up. The floor may shake. The door closed. Shelves vibrated. The windows went black for one breath, and bottles clicked together before the store settled. I counted the wage again. Weird store. Weird manager. Several months of rent. Money won. The bell rang. A short office worker marched inside with brown fur, sharp teeth, and the face of an enraged chihuahua. A necktie strangled the last joy out of him. At the time, I blamed movie makeup. Toothbrushes, he barked. Where? He returned with 3 bristle choices and demanded to know why teeth needed a personality test. I explained. He called the hard brush a scam, complained about his supervisor, bought the medium one, and stormed out without his change. I ran after him. Keep it, he snapped. I don't have time to watch you learn speed. My first impossible customer had insulted me and tipped me in the same breath. The bell rang again. A tiny green goblin dragged a sack of coins onto the counter and ordered me to exchange them for bills. The goblin killed my costume theory. I counted for 20 minutes while he criticized every speed I tried. Halfway through, I called Holly. I kept my voice low. A goblin is making me count a sack of coins. Yes, they do that, Holly replied. I added. The last customer had a dog's head, Holly corrected me. Kobold. Which district did the store choose? I stopped counting. What district? Holly went silent. Then she told me to finish the exchange, open the front door, and describe the street. The goblin tapped the counter. My money first. I paid him out, waited for him to leave, and unlocked the door. My city was gone. A stone avenue stretched beneath violet lamps. An elf in a suit argued with a horned taxi driver. Bird people crossed above the roofs. A snake-tailed woman waited at a food cart like this was an ordinary commute. Holly spoke carefully through the phone. Wayfarer Market moved between customer districts. She was a mage. Tonight's scheduled route had carried the store into her world. I locked the door again. Holly, my world doesn't have magic. It doesn't have kobolds, goblins, or flying commuters either. She thought I was joking until I held the phone toward a minotaur shouting in traffic. Holly finally understood. The store had paused in my world, and Holly had seen a human. Both of us had assumed the other understood what kind of human. She told me to stay inside while she found a route back. The bell rang before she could. A horned woman entered in a dark office dress. Her coat framed a very convincing argument for adult monster women existing. I noticed. I was scared, not dead. Small bat wings folded behind her shoulders. Her steps wobbled. She reached the counter, tried to speak, and suddenly burst into wild laughter. Then her knees gave out, her bag struck the floor, chips scattered beneath the register, and 2 bottles rolled toward the freezer. The laughter cut off so suddenly that the silence scared me more. The horned woman was Serena Lockwood, though I had not learned her name yet. At that moment, I only knew the gorgeous adult succubus had collapsed beside the gum display. I ducked behind the counter first. I hid first. The honest version sounds worse, so I am keeping it honest. Then I saw one wing twitch and remembered the store rule. Every species still had to receive service, even when the employee wanted to become part of the floor. I crawled back out, checked that nothing blocked her breathing, and kept Holly on the phone. Holly shouted through the phone that the woman sounded magically contaminated. She directed me to the neon pink detector. I grabbed it. The wand jerked from my hand, shot across the aisle, and smacked Serena in the forehead. She dropped flat. A bag of chips slid from her hand. 2 drink bottles rolled beneath the freezer. "Holly," I whispered, "your medical equipment just chose violence." Holly ordered me to check Serena's breathing in the detector light. She was alive. The wand glowed violet. Holly told me violet meant magical contamination that could still be forced out. She made me tilt Serena onto one side, measure the silver packet remedy, and give only enough to wake her safely. Serena swallowed, coughed, and opened her eyes. She looked at me, the pink wand beside her, and the blanket display she had nearly dragged down. "Did I fall?" she whispered. The floor won. The medical equipment joined in. Her cheeks colored with embarrassment before the medicine reached her stomach. Then her face changed. She grabbed the trash bin. What came out looked like somebody had liquefied a rainbow and made it angry. Relief lasted 3 seconds. Cleanup had entered the chat. Serena sagged against the counter afterward. "Cold," she murmured. "I found a clean blanket." She pulled it around herself and fell asleep again before the first dose fully stayed down. I called Holly back. Holly told me to give Serena the remaining medicine once her breathing settled. I administered the real dose while she slept. The detector still acted strangely when I tried again, which meant her magical state remained abnormal. Before we could solve that, the bell rang. A pale young man entered and asked for a higher-grade blood bag the store did not stock. His eyes kept sliding toward the cigarette case. He looked 16. He claimed he was a vampire and therefore much older. Holly, still on the phone, warned me that vampires could look young for decades. Store policy required valid identification for every age-restricted product. The vampire leaned across the counter. "You can tell I'm old enough." "I can tell you want cigarettes," I replied. "Show me the card." He sighed like I had interrupted royal business. Then he produced an enchanted ID and placed it down with theatrical confidence. The general store alarm stayed silent. The vampire tapped the card twice. "Your own system accepts it. Sell me the cigarettes." Holly heard him through the phone and told me the alarm was only a first check. Valid identification still had to survive a clerk looking at it. He leaned closer. "Do you question every vampire, or only the ones who look better than you? Only the ones buying age-restricted products with a face younger than the gum?" He smiled without humor. "Satisfied?" The photo looked right. His card looked expensive, but the corner of the face image lifted when his thumb moved. I had seen cheap sticker fraud at ordinary stores. Magic had made everyone trust the surface. The physical edge still existed. I caught it with my fingernail. The vampire's smile disappeared. "Don't touch that," he snapped. Too late. I peeled away his enchanted photo sticker. Another adult man's face appeared beneath it. The ID released a white security light. It wrapped around the vampire's wrist, climbed his sleeve, and chased him when he yanked away. The vampire slapped at the glow. It jumped from one wrist to the other and brightened around the peeled edge. His confidence had depended on everyone trusting the enchantment. The card itself had started testifying against him. Serena stirred beneath the blanket and lifted her head. Holly went silent on the phone long enough to hear him panic. The vampire backed toward the door. "The card malfunctioned." I held up the peeled sticker. "Sure, it malfunctioned into somebody else's face." He tried to tear off the light. It followed him like an angry receipt. Holly raised her voice through the phone. "I can call the police and let them inspect it." The vampire ran. He hit the door shoulder first, recovered, and disappeared down the fantasy street with his own ID exposing him in public. Wrong store. Worse clerk. Holly asked how I had caught a forgery that fooled the magical alarm. I held the peeled sticker up to the phone. The picture had a lifted edge. He kept rushing me and watching the cigarettes instead of the blood bags. Holly studied the cheap adhesive over the advanced illusion. Official IDs carry powerful enchantments. You triggered the card's own security by peeling off the overlay. Elite magic had lost a convenience store experience and one suspicious fingernail. Holly's tone changed. She wanted my judgment now. Serena slept under the blanket while the goblin's coin dust still covered the counter. Holly's voice softened. Derek, this was my mistake. You're from another world. The job may be dangerous. I can end the contract and pay you for tonight. Holly told me she could bring the store back to my block and erase the rest of the contract. Her voice had lost every trace of manager confidence. She had hired me without checking what world I came from. Then she left me alone inside a route full of customers I could not identify. She sounded ready to pay for the mistake by losing the only clerk who had survived the shift. I asked whether ending the contract would change the rent due at home. Rent would still be due. The fantasy world was dangerous. Homelessness was simply a danger I already understood. I looked at the wage number on my copy. Then I pictured the empty account and the rent notice. No, I told her, I'm staying. Holly asked whether I understood what I was choosing. I looked at Serena sleeping under a store blanket. The fake sticker was still in my hand, and the contract could keep me housed. The danger was real. So was the rent due in my world. If I quit tonight, I go back to an empty account and another rejection tomorrow, I said. At least this place pays me for surviving the problem. Holly warned me again that I had no magic and almost no knowledge of her world. I have register experience, I replied. Apparently that already beats vampires. She laughed once, then tried to hide it with a cough. I meant the decision. Fear could come to work with me. It did not get my paycheck. The detector beside Serena gave another broken chirp. Before Holly could explain why, a heavy impact struck the street outside. Shelves rattled. A winged horse screamed, and a woman's voice ordered someone to clear the entrance. The winged horse landed outside Wayfarer Market hard enough to shake Serena's medicine off the counter. A blue-haired woman swung down from the saddle while stacked cargo boxes floated behind her. She was an adult, dressed for travel, and carrying herself like the street belonged to her until delivery was complete. I opened the door halfway. She looked me up and down. You're blocking my entrance. You arrived on a flying horse. I needed 1 second. Her mouth twitched. Take half. The other half belongs to my schedule. That was Kaya Fairchild, Holly's sister. She handled deliveries, procurement, and any supplier problem expensive enough to ruin breakfast. She also looked unfairly good after landing through a cloud of dust. My courage improved for reasons unrelated to safety. Kaya pointed at the sleeping succubus behind me. Did she lose a fight with the floor? The detector won, I answered. Holly called Kaya through the store phone and explained the mess in rapid sentences. Serena had stabilized, but the wand still could not read her cleanly. Holly wanted a second scan after the remaining dose settled. Kaya knelt beside Serena and checked her pulse. Serena opened one eye, saw 2 strangers hovering over her, and pulled the blanket higher. I'm alive, Serena whispered. Please stop looking so relieved. It's embarrassing. I helped Serena sit up and tried the detector again. It chirped, flashed violet, and died before the reading settled. Holly's voice tightened. Serena was awake, but her magical state was still abnormal. Kaya glanced toward the floating cargo blocking the entrance. The second crisis had already arrived. Holly ordered a taxi, but the driver needed several minutes to reach the store. Serena stayed beneath the blanket while Kaya turned to the waiting delivery. Kaya marched back inside and handed me a delivery sheet covered in symbols I could not read. I stared at it. She stared at me. You don't read standard script? Kaya asked. My world's standard script looks different. Kaya turned toward the phone. Holly, you hired him from another world and left him alone with receiving forms? Holly's answer came through the speaker. I hired a cashier. The other world part arrived after the signature. The sisters started bickering. I found the one box on the form shaped like our snack logo and pointed to it. Holly told me to sign only the basic receipt while Kaya verified the cargo aloud. She would fix the formal record later. Kaya opened each outer crate and called off the contents. Drinks, packaged food, medicine, replacement glass seals. Then she reached the final line and tapped the largest container. The shipment included several dragon scales used as valuable industrial material. I asked whether she meant decorative replicas. Kaya knocked on the sealed crate. Something huge thudded inside. Real scales, she replied. Please don't ask the dragon for a return authorization. The taxi lights appeared outside. Kaya gathered Serena's scattered purchases while I found her bag. Serena tried to stand on her own, her knees folded halfway. I caught her elbow. Kaya caught the other side. Serena looked between us and groaned. This is worse than the wand. The wand had less bedside manner, I replied. Kaya handed Serena the last drink she had bought. Sip, if you collapse on the sidewalk, Holly will make us file a second report. Serena obeyed. Her wings stopped trembling after a few breaths. At the door, she paused. She looked directly at me. What is love? I had been employed for 1 night. Apparently the duties now included existential counseling. Right now? I asked. Serena nodded with painful seriousness. The taxi waited outside. Kaya held the door. Holly was still listening through the phone. 3 adult women expected an answer from a man whose dating history had the activity level of an abandoned parking lot. I chose honesty with a little panic mixed in. Love is something people want badly and still can't force, I told Serena. A real relationship needs 2 people choosing it. Her eyes widened. Kaya glanced at me, then at Serena. Holly went quiet again. Serena repeated the line under her breath. Then she stepped into the taxi with her medicine and purchases. Before the door closed, she asked, "May I return and ask again? Please buy something next time," I replied. Holly pays me to sell snacks, not repair the concept of love. Serena smiled for the first time that night. The taxi carried her away. Kaya watched the taxi turn the corner, then looked at me. That answer sounded practiced. It was assembled during an emergency. Holly's voice came through the phone. "Derek has never dated." I looked at the screen. "Employee privacy has collapsed faster than the store." Kaya laughed, but Serena's question stayed with me. She entered as a magical crisis and left planning to return for an answer. My first recurring monster woman was now a customer service problem with eye contact. That should have cleared the crisis. Too bad the dragon scale crate had started leaking value in the wrong direction. Kaya checked the seals. Her easy expression vanished at the 3rd crate. She pressed 2 fingers to the latch, pulled them away, and smelled the air. "Holly, this one's wrong." Holly ordered us to move the shipment into the warehouse and inspect it before the contamination spread. I expected a stockroom. Kaya led me through a hidden door behind the freezer. Stone stairs descended into a cavernous storage complex lit by blue lamps. Iron gates divided long passages. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. "Your sister built a dungeon under a convenience store," I said. Kaya kept walking. "She calls it organized storage." Holly's voice came through Kaya's phone. "It is organized." Kaya pointed at a skeleton-shaped coat rack beside the stairs. "This has a sword through it." "Seasonal decor," Holly replied. I was starting to understand their family dynamic. Holly designed problems. Kaya delivered them. I got paid to stand nearby when they became alive. At the end of the corridor, Kaya opened the defective crate. A dragon scale filled most of it. The curved slab was taller than I was and shimmered dark red beneath the warehouse lights. Purple sludge leaked from a hole near its center. The smell reached me a second later. I stepped back. "That thing is sick." Kaya covered her nose. "It was purified badly. Magical materials hold contaminated energy when a processor rushes the work. Purple sludge meant contaminated magic. Clean materials should stay stable, and every normal purification company was closed until morning." Kaya called the supplier. Nobody answered. She tried a second number. The call failed again. Holly appeared on Kaya's phone screen, hair still messy from running between routes. She asked me to bring the pink detector closer. The wand squealed before I touched the sludge. Kaya noticed. "Same noise it made around him?" Holly nodded. "During orientation, I thought the device had failed." The purple sludge pulsed toward the edge of the scale. I moved my hand closer. It recoiled. All 3 of us stopped. I moved left. The sludge pulled right. I moved right. It slid left. Kaya's eyes narrowed. Holly leaned closer to her screen. "Derek," Holly said, "touch a small amount." "No." My answer came out fast because self-preservation had finally clocked in. Kaya promised the substance was usually harmless after containment. "It just fled from my hand," I replied. "That is a review from the product itself." Holly offered hazard pay. I asked how much. Kaya laughed. "There he is." Kaya looked from me to the sludge. "Does money make humans resistant?" "Only briefly," I told her. The bonus was large enough to turn terror into a negotiable feeling. I rolled up my sleeve and extended one finger. The sludge twisted away until it hit the crate wall. I trapped a bead beneath my fingertip. Purple flashed through clear blue. The rotten smell vanished. Kaya's phone almost slipped from her hand. The detector stayed quiet, and a second test strip remained clean. "He purified it," Kaya said. Her professional equipment had needed one terrified touch from a cashier. Holly gave us the working theory in plain language. Some people resisted magic. A rare few could cancel it. My failed orientation scan, the detector's behavior, and the blue sludge pointed toward an unusually strong anti-magic constitution. I stared at my fingertip. "So I have magic?" "Your body may erase magic," Holly replied. "That is the opposite problem." Kaya touched the clean blue bead with a gloved finger. "And the scale stayed intact." Holly said intent might matter. I had wanted the contamination gone and the valuable material preserved. One clean bead was not enough to prove control. The blue sample was clean, but the huge scale still leaked purple sludge from its center. Kaya examined the opening. "If Derek reaches the contaminated pocket, he may save the entire piece." I looked at the hole. It looked back emotionally. "No!" Kaya stepped closer. "The scale is worth an enormous amount." I pointed at the scale. "Then use an enormous professional." "They're closed," Kaya replied. I pointed toward the warehouse exit. "Open them." Kaya planted one hand against the crate beside my shoulder. She was close enough for me to notice that confidence apparently had a perfume. "Derek," she said, "please." I glanced at the phone. Holly had copied Kaya's pleading expression with suspicious speed. The sisters had formed a coordinated attack. One used proximity, the other used wounded eyes. Ruthless. "That face isn't part of the safety protocol," I told Holly. "The bonus can increase," Holly replied. My courage potion received a refill. Kaya's teasing stopped when I looked back at the opening. She said the scale might be ruined by morning, but I could refuse. I checked the promised bonus. Rent still had a powerful voice. I made them state the limits. Kaya would brace the scale and pull me out if it reacted. Holly would watch the detector. Nobody called it safe. Kaya planted both feet beside the crate and gripped my belt. "Comforting," I said. "You complained about being pulled in. My complaint became prophecy." Then, I made the choice. I pushed my hand into the opening. Cold sludge closed around my wrist. The scale shuddered. Kaya grabbed my shoulder. "Hold still." Excellent advice after the dragon part started moving. The opening tightened. I tried to pull back. The scale dragged my arm deeper. My joke died right there. Purple light raced along the ridges. The entire slab bent inward, gripping me past the elbow. Kaya wrapped both arms around my waist and pulled while Holly shouted through the phone, but the scale kept taking me. Pain flashed through my shoulder. Kaya tightened her grip and dragged her heels against the stone floor. I stopped fighting the material and focused on one thing: remove the contamination, keep the scale. The cold pressure surged. Blue light burst from the hole. The scale released me so suddenly that Kaya and I flew backward. I landed against her, and she hit the floor beneath both of us. For one very confused second, my face was close to Kaya's. Kaya blinked. "You charge extra for this position?" My bonus discussion just became private. Then the scale roared. Cracks sealed across its surface. The purple sludge vanished into bright blue veins. A wave of clean energy rolled through the warehouse and blew dust from every shelf. Kaya shoved me upright and ran to the crate. Holly ordered one full scan. The detector stayed silent. The opening had sealed into smooth red crystal. Kaya's professional expression broke. She threw both arms around me. "You saved it!" Holly laughed through the phone, then made Kaya check my wrist. The skin hurt, but my fingers moved and the purple stain was gone. "Any numbness?" Holly asked. "Only financial clarity." The store had avoided a massive loss. I had also shown both sisters that my body could do work specialists needed equipment to handle. The promised bonus reached me before sunrise. "Better." Kaya stopped treating me like temporary staff. At the storefront, she tightened the Pegasus saddle. "You put your arm inside a dragon scale for us. Use my first name." Money put my arm inside it. Kaya smiled. "Keep telling yourself that." Holly's first light route was waiting, so Kaya mounted the Pegasus and lifted into the morning sky with the rescued cargo. I watched until the wings disappeared between buildings. Saving the scale proved I could cancel harmful magic. Holly's next question was worse. Could useful magic affect me when I actually wanted it to? Sunrise brought the morning rush before Holly could test anything else. Kobolds in office clothes packed the aisles. An orc bought energy drinks by the armful. A tired elf argued with the coffee machine until I stepped in and pressed the button she had missed. After dragons, succubi, and anti-magic, my greatest enemy was still a line of commuters holding exact change grudges. Holly worked the second register. She moved fast, smiled at regulars, and slipped me small corrections without making customers wait. One kobold tried to cut the line. Holly pointed to the back without raising her voice. He went. A bird woman dropped 3 coins. I caught one with my shoe while the customer behind her found the other 2. She thanked us by buying an extra pastry. The rush gave me several small wins, and for once, nobody exploded. I almost trusted the quiet. By the time the crowd thinned, I had been awake all night. My legs felt borrowed. Holly handed me water and told me to sit for 5 minutes. Then a tiny voice came from below the counter. "Excuse me?" I looked over the register and saw nobody. "Down here," the voice insisted. A very young girl stood beside the candy display. White horns curved through her hair. Little claws tipped her fingers. She carried a coin purse in both hands and looked furious at the top shelf for being tall. The girl introduced herself as Maisie. She wanted colored paper and scissors for a Mother's Day gift. I only knew she had horns, claws, and a problem with the top shelf. I brought down the paper and scissors. Maisie counted her money twice, then her shoulders dropped. "I can buy one," she told me, "but I need both." I offered to cover the rest. Maisie closed the coin purse. "My mother says I shouldn't take money from strangers." The rule was good, the timing was awful. I asked what she planned to make. Maisie showed me a torn practice sheet. Claw marks ran through every flower she had tried to cut. "Paper loses," she said. "Paper usually does." She wanted to build a flower picture because her mother always gave her presents. This year, Maisie wanted to give something back. I could not hand her money without breaking the rule she trusted, so I used store property instead. I put the scissors behind the counter. You can borrow these while you're here. You only need to buy the paper. Maisie studied my face. Borrowing isn't taking. You return them before you leave. Very serious business arrangement. She bought the colored paper. I cleared a corner of the counter, sketched simple flower outlines, and showed her how to hold each sheet while I cut. She arranged the pieces by color with intense concentration. Her claws tore the first stem. Maisie stared at the damage and tried to hide it beneath another sheet. I pulled the torn stem back out and pressed it flat. We can use it. Maisie frowned. It is broken. I placed it beside a clean stem. Flowers bend. Put it beside a straight one. She tested the idea. The picture gained a wind-blown row instead of a ruined piece. When one petal came out crooked, she stared at that too. Flowers are crooked in real life, I said. Maisie put it in the center. Then this one is realistic. There was more confidence in that sentence than my entire job search. After 20 minutes, she opened a chocolate bar she had bought with her remaining coins. She broke it into 2 pieces. One was clearly larger. Maisie handed me the larger half. Payment, she declared. I tried to switch them. Her claws closed around the smaller piece. You did more work. I owned the scissors for another 9 minutes. Then finished quickly. The negotiation was over. I ate the larger piece. Maisie refused charity. By splitting her own chocolate, she had paid me on her own terms. Holly returned from the back room while we worked. She stopped when she saw Maisie's horns. Derek, Holly murmured. Do you know whose child that is? Maisie immediately moved behind me. I looked at Holly. Apparently mine, according to her positioning. Holly's expression cracked. She explained that pure-blood dragon children were rare and heavily protected. Their horns sensed magical colors before they had enough experience to interpret everything safely. The rule stayed narrow. Maisie could notice active magic and strong hostile intent. She could not scan a person's whole soul like a tiny courtroom. Holly crouched to Maisie's height. Hello, I'm Holly. I manage the store. Maisie peeked around my leg. Hello, ma'am. Holly flinched. You can call me Holly. Maisie considered that. Yes, ma'am. I had seen vampires flee magic. Holly took more damage from one polite child. She tried offering Maisie a store chair. Maisie stayed behind me. Holly whispered. Why does she trust you? My face has fewer management qualities. Maisie heard that and nodded. Holly pressed a hand to her chest. This store is turning against me. A regular waiting for coffee laughed. Holly glared at him, and he became fascinated by the lid dispenser. The craft project was still unfinished when Maisie had to leave. She refused to carry loose pieces on her bicycle, so I offered to keep everything in a labeled bag behind the counter. Maisie made me promise nobody would throw it away. I promised. She returned the scissors, thanked me, and rode off toward school with the straight-back seriousness of a tiny executive. Before she left, Maisie inspected the labeled bag twice. She made me write her name in large letters, then asked Holly whether the warehouse swallowed small objects. Holly looked offended. The warehouse has never swallowed a customer's craft project. Maisie glanced at the hidden dungeon door. Has it swallowed other things? She asked. Holly opened her mouth, reconsidered, and looked at me for help. I sealed the bag and placed it on the highest shelf behind the register. It stays here until you return. Maisie accepted my answer immediately. Holly watched that trust transfer happen in real time. Her smile stayed polite. Her eyes promised a future investigation into why the child had ranked a one-night employee above the store's owner. Maisie asked whether I would be working when she came back. I told her yes. She nodded once, satisfied, and wheeled her bicycle away from the entrance. A passing kobold moved aside when he saw her horns, then bowed respectfully after she thanked him. That made Maisie's trust valuable and risky. I had earned it with scissors and chocolate. Keeping it meant staying worthy of it. The store felt strangely quiet after she left. Her labeled craft bag remained on the highest shelf. A customer who had watched her work pointed at it and asked whether we sold handmade gifts now. One unfinished order, I said. The bag had turned a morning kindness into a reason for Maisie to return. Holly locked the doors for closing. Then she placed a globe-shaped machine on the counter. Threads of light circled miniature streets inside it. This controls Wayfarer Market's destination, she explained. Scheduled routes are easy. An unknown world needs somebody who knows the exact place and truly wants to go there. Without destination knowledge and genuine intent, the teleport would fail. I asked what happened if I entered the wrong address. Holly tapped the glowing store icon inside the globe. The whole building follows your mistake. Fantastic. A teleporting convenience store still needed an address, and now I was the navigation system. Holly wanted to test whether useful magic could affect me when I consciously accepted it. The dragon scale had survived because I wanted the scale preserved. Reaching my apartment would push that idea harder. She made me place both hands on the globe. The miniature district shifted beneath the glass, showing routes I could not read. I typed my address using Holly's translation spell. The device rejected it. Holly adjusted the route map and asked me to picture the street instead of the words. I closed my eyes. I pictured my apartment building's cracked front step and the bakery across the road. The bus stop still had one broken panel. I knew that route from 6 months of rejection. My old world had failed me. It was still home. The globe warmed beneath my hand. Holly placed her palm over the central seal. Let the spell reach you. Don't fight it. I wanted to go home. The floor rolled beneath us. Shelves bent sideways without falling. The windows turned black. A deep pressure pushed through my chest, and every muscle tried to reject it. One bottle lifted from a shelf and hovered. Holly caught it without looking away from the globe. Stay focused, she ordered. I kept my hand on the glass. Home, I said. The pressure passed. The lights steadied. Holly unlocked the front door. Across the street stood my bakery. The broken bus stop panel leaned exactly where I remembered. Morning traffic moved through my neighborhood, completely unaware that a magical convenience store had just parked beside it. I stepped outside. Cold human world air hit my face. A man walking his dog slowed and looked at the bright storefront. He checked the sign twice, clearly certain it had not been there yesterday. The dog sniffed the threshold and refused to cross it. Holly came beside me and checked the store walls. The teleport had succeeded. Nothing inside had lost its enchantment. My body had allowed the magic through because I wanted the destination. Holly's professional calm lasted until she looked at me. Derek, that shouldn't be easy. It wasn't. My chest feels like it argued with a train. She touched the detector to my sleeve. The device gave the same warped chirp, but the teleportation glow still clung to the doorway. Holly revised her guess. My anti-magic could reject harmful effects, permit useful ones, and perhaps preserve selected magic when my intent was strong enough. She also suspected the same strange trait might explain why Wayfarer Market reached my world. Holly only suspected it. Neither of us knew why the store had reached my world. For now, I had gotten home. Holly handed me the dragon scale bonus in an envelope. The amount made my knees feel better immediately. Then she gave me a small bottle of sleeping potion. 1 dose, Holly warned. It will help your body adjust to overnight shifts. I eyed the strawberry liquid. Your last medical device attacked a customer. The potion has never developed free will. Comforting standard. Holly walked with me to the edge of the neighborhood before returning to the store. Human commuters passed her without noticing the faint magic around her coat. She asked whether I regretted signing the contract. I looked back at Wayfarer Market glowing on the corner where it had never existed before. Ask me after rent clears, I said. Holly accepted the answer, but her expression showed she wanted something less financial. I gave her one honest piece. The first shift was insane. You still came back every time I called. I hired you, she replied. That makes your survival my responsibility. Managers in my world usually start with scheduling. Your world sounds poorly enchanted. She returned to the store smiling. I carried the bonus upstairs, paid the urgent phone bill, and set aside the rent before I could spend anything stupid. The numbers on my banking screen finally stopped looking like a countdown. At my apartment, I took the dose, set 3 alarms, and fell asleep before my head finished touching the pillow. When I woke, the room was dark. For one ugly second, I thought I had slept through an entire day. All 3 alarms showed I had woken exactly on time. The potion had given me clean, heavy rest without the usual midday noise tearing me awake. I counted the bonus again. Rent was covered, my phone bill was covered. The impossible job had done what 6 months of applications could not. That night, I walked back to the glowing storefront. I could have stayed home and called the first shift a nightmare. Instead, I opened the door for shift 2. Holly looked up from the register. Relief moved across her face before she hid it under a manager's smile. You came back. The potion worked, I told her. Also, you still owe me normal employee problems. The bell rang. A bald elf entered carrying a bottle he had already opened. I thought magic was the dangerous part of the job. Shift 2 was about to prove ordinary customer service could compete. My second shift began with the bald elf raising his open bottle beside the register. Holly pointed at the door. You can't drink inside the store. The elf took a long swallow while maintaining eye contact. There are people who hear a rule and adjust. He heard a rule and treated it like a public challenge. He demanded another bottle, insulted my employee badge, and asked whether Holly had hired me because humans were easier to control. I took the unopened bottle from his reach. You can buy this and drink it outside, I told him. Or you can leave with the one you opened. The elf slapped the counter. This is discrimination, his voice carried through the store. 2 customers near the freezer turned to watch. Holly kept her tone even. The same rule applies to every species. The elf pointed at his ears. You people always say that after targeting elves. Then he called me a useless clerk and tried to climb behind the counter. I blocked him with the promotional display. Sir, your ears aren't holding the bottle, I said. Your hand is. Take both outside. One customer snorted. The other moved her basket away from the elf. His public support had lasted roughly 4 seconds. He kicked the display. Candy bars scattered across the tile. Holly moved between him and the register. You damaged store property. Leave. The elf dropped to the floor. This grown man started rolling beside the candy rack while shouting that Wayfarer Market hated elves. The floor-rolling philosopher had reached his final form. He grabbed the base of a shelf as Holly tried to move him toward the door. I removed the open bottle before he could spill more of it. A customer started filming. The elf noticed the phone and increased the volume, convinced an audience would rescue him. Instead, the person filming asked whether he had paid for the drink. He had not. Holly called the police after he kicked the shelf again. By then, his attempt had already failed. We had held the rule. Customers had stopped siding with him, and he was lying in his own spilled drink. A wolf-like officer and an exhausted elf officer arrived. They lifted him by both arms while he continued protesting. The elf officer looked at the open bottle, the wet floor, and the security display he had knocked over. Her expression asked why her own species kept assigning her extra paperwork. The drunk elf tried one last speech. The wolf officer told him he could deliver it from the patrol car. They removed him. The customer who had filmed sent Holly the clip, then bought the candy bar she had stepped on. The second customer helped me gather the unopened pieces. Holly and I cleaned the floor together. While she replaced the display, she gave me the short version of the history I had just stepped into. Industrial expansion had destroyed large parts of elven land. Elves fought the other races, lost the war, and never recovered their old population or status. Modern prejudice still followed them into jobs and housing. Holly glanced toward the door the exhausted elf officer had used. She guessed that some officers worked themselves raw to avoid giving anyone another excuse to judge them. The drunk customer had used a real wound as permission to abuse workers. Both things could be true. My job remained keeping his bottle off the floor. The bell rang before the history became a lecture. Bruno marched in. My angry office chihuahua had returned wearing the same tight necktie and a deeper personal hatred for dental products. He placed 2 tubes of toothpaste on the counter. Which one? I read the labels. One was basic, the other came with a buy one get one promotion. I recommended the promotion. Bruno narrowed his eyes. So you admit the first product is overpriced? I held up both tubes. I admit 2 tubes are more toothpaste than 1, Bruno sniffed. That answer lacks expertise. I tapped the promotion label. Your teeth asked for quantity. He stared at me for a full second. Then he bought the promotion. Bruno shoved the free tube across the counter. I don't need 2. I pushed it back. You selected the offer. Bruno bared one tiny tooth. You recommended it. Take responsibility. I tried to return it. Bruno pushed it back with one claw. Are you refusing customer feedback? Holly entered the exchange. Bruno, you can keep both. He looked offended. I have limited bathroom storage. Then stop buying promotions, Holly replied. Bruno turned toward me. Your manager has poor sales instincts. She hired me, I said. Evidence supports you. Holly threw a receipt roll at my shoulder. Bruno left before I could return the toothpaste. First change, then toothpaste. The angry care package had expanded. I called it a very expensive way of avoiding normal kindness. Any softer explanation remained unproven. A few minutes later, Serena entered. She was the succubus from my first shift, now upright, healthy, and visibly embarrassed about everything the pink wand had witnessed. Her fitted office clothes made it difficult to maintain a purely clinical memory of the incident. I managed through discipline and fear of another rainbow cleanup. Serena approached the counter with a sheet of blank paper. Do you sell resignation letters? She asked. I looked at the paper. We sell envelopes. The emotional collapse is free. She almost laughed, then stopped herself. Serena allowed me to scan her. The detector glowed a calm blue and stayed in my hand. Progress for both patient and weapon. She apologized for the mess. You were sick, I replied. The floor forgave you after 3 buckets. Her wings tightened with embarrassment. Serena explained that she worked for a company producing love-related medicine. Succubi often had talent for charm, romance counseling, and potion work. She had the talent. She had never dated anyone. Her supervisors expected insight she did not possess. Co-workers laughed when she hesitated. She had pushed her magic too hard trying to compensate, which caused the contamination that dropped her in my store. I think I should resign, Serena said. I am defective for my own species. Her voice stayed formal, but her hands crushed the blank paper. I knew that feeling. The cafe manager had looked at my age and decided my usefulness before I worked a single minute. I kept the advice short and asked one question. I asked, do you hate the work? Serena shook her head. I asked, do you hurt people with the medicine? No, Serena replied. I follow every safety rule. I pointed at the blank paper. Then your problem is experience. That's humiliating. Your character is fine. Serena looked at me. How much experience do you have? She had turned my own confidence against me. Personally? None. Her eyes widened. None? 29 years. Perfect record. Serena covered her mouth, but the laugh escaped. Her laugh came out clean this time, with no magical contamination behind it. Then why did your answer about love sound confident, she asked. Because confidence is cheaper than dating. She leaned closer. You told me love can't be forced. What should it be? Both people get a choice, I said. They care about each other without one person performing a role all day. I pointed at the blank page. Try meeting someone safely before quitting. One honest date may teach you more than another month of coworkers mocking you. Serena looked down at the blank paper. I would make a poor first impression. Your first impression involved a pink wand and rainbow vomit. The second one has nowhere to go except up. Serena groaned into both hands. I let her suffer for 1 second, then gave her the useful part. You're attractive. You listen. You care whether you hurt people. Somebody will be interested. Her hands lowered. Color reached her cheeks. You think I'm attractive? I have eyes. They survived orientation. She held my gaze longer than necessary. Serena touched one horn. Most people see my species and assume I know exactly what I want. Most customers see my vest and assume I know every toothpaste. Uniforms create confidence nobody earned. She smiled, then asked, would you trust someone who can influence desire? I answered the real question. I'd trust what you do when the magic isn't working. You came back, admitted you were scared, and asked instead of pretending. Her fingers loosened around the resignation paper. You make inexperience sound useful, Serena said. It keeps both of us from pretending to be experts. She folded the paper once, but not into a resignation. Holly emerged from the stockroom at exactly the wrong moment. She looked from Serena to me, then to the blank page. Am I interrupting employee counseling? Holly asked. Customer retention. Serena folded the page instead of writing on it. Holly pretended to arrange the same medicine box 3 times. Serena leaned toward me. Your manager is listening. Quality control. Holly set the box down. I call it keeping unpaid counseling away from the register. Serena laughed. Before leaving for work, she bought a hangover remedy and asked whether she could return. Yes, I told her. Bring an easier question. I can't promise that. She left with the resignation paper blank. Holly watched the door close. Succubi can become strongly attached to someone who makes them feel safe. You could have mentioned that before I invited her back. You looked busy surviving eye contact. She had me there. I put Bruno's free toothpaste beneath the register. Holly watched me do it. Where did that come from? Customer complaint. The crash outside saved me from explaining. A metal-bodied man had fallen beside a bicycle. His chain hung loose from the rear gear while he tried to push it back with thick mechanical fingers. I ran outside. The robot introduced himself as Orson Gearhart. He owned a monster processing factory and had been riding between jobs when the chain slipped. For a machine built from polished metal, he looked personally betrayed by basic transportation. The chain refuses alignment, Orson said. I turned the bicycle over, loosened the wheel, seated the chain, and tightened it again. 2 ordinary actions, no spell. No anti-magic! Orson spun the pedal, loaded his full weight onto it, and rode to the curb and back. The chain stayed quiet. A child walking past stopped to watch the polished robot circle the sidewalk. The child's father watched me instead, clearly wondering why a factory owner needed a human clerk for basic repair. Holly stepped outside. You repair bicycles too? My world invented inconvenience without magic. We adapted. Orson asked what tool I had used. I held up the store wrench. Metal, pressure, and somebody remembering how chains work. His eye lights brightened. Orson explained that he owned a monster processing factory. His workers handled complex magical machines, but his thick fingers could not reach a slipped bicycle chain. Then he handed me a business card. You treated my problem seriously, Orson said. Call if I can repay you. I reseated a chain. He tapped the card against his metal palm. A small failed part can stop an entire machine. The size does not reduce the favor. I accepted the card. Orson nodded and rode away under his own power. At the time, it looked like a polite promise from a customer. Holly checked the calendar as we returned inside. Her expression tightened. Tomorrow is Friday, she said. Friday night breaks convenience store workers. I looked at the pink detector, Bruno's toothpaste, and the business card in my hand. How much worse can normal customer stress get? Holly stared at me with genuine pity. Friday night answered my question before midnight. Wayfarer Market became a fantasy disaster party even though drinking inside was illegal. An elf used a beer bottle as a microphone. A bird woman danced between the snack racks. 3 customers opened food before paying and acted offended when I asked for the wrappers. The store rule was blunt. Open it, pay for it, spill it, help me find the mop. Nobody respected the second part. Holly worked an earlier route across town, so I had the overnight counter alone. She warned me by phone that stressed workers treated Friday convenience stores like cheap therapy with fluorescent lighting. The warning arrived while a group of elves were harmonizing badly beside the freezer. I collected 6 empty packages from customers who claimed they planned to pay later. One tried to hand me a half-eaten sandwich and asked for a discount because only half remained. You made it smaller, I told him. He stared at the sandwich, caught in his own evidence, and paid full price. A goblin opened a bottle with his teeth. The cap hit a ceiling light and dropped into somebody else's soup. That customer demanded compensation from the goblin. The goblin blamed the bottle company. I put the two men on opposite sides of the counter. They settled the soup before the argument became a species conflict. The bird woman climbed onto a display while I was doing that. She was an adult harpy with broad wings and glittering eye makeup. Her confidence said her friends had stopped supervising her an hour earlier. She declared herself a swan. Then she jumped toward me. I caught her because letting a drunk customer faceplant still counted as bad service. For 1 second, the scene looked much more romantic than it felt. She was gorgeous, warm, and wrapped around my shoulders. She also weighed enough to make both knees file complaints. Sir Swan, I told her, you need to stand. The harpy pressed one finger to my lips. Swan Princess, my mistake, please stand, Your Highness. 2 elf customers applauded. One started chanting for the Swan Princess to fly. I got her feet onto the floor and took her open drink before crowd encouragement created a ceiling problem. She bowed, lost balance, and grabbed a chip rack. Bags rained onto the floor. The chanting stopped when I handed the loudest elf a basket and told him to help pick them up. The loudest elf stopped chanting and started picking up chips. A group of customers reached the counter carrying open drinks and no memory of which bottle belonged to whom. I lined the bottles up, made each person claim one, and charged the totals before anyone could wander away. The elf with the microphone tried to pay in song. I held out my hand. He produced cash. The harpy climbed onto the display again while her friends argued over snacks. I caught her ankle before she could launch a second flight. Swan princesses use doors, I told her. She looked at the entrance. That door is boring. The sentence had barely left her mouth when the front bell rang. A minotaur charged straight through the glass door. He did not open it. He entered as a full-body renovation project. Glass burst across the entrance. The bull-headed customer stumbled into the store with a metal frame hanging from one horn. He looked around, blinked twice, and wandered back outside as though the building had attacked him. The harpy pointed after him. Majestic! I looked at the missing door. Cleanup remained undefeated. Customers near the entrance finally stopped singing. One lowered his bottle. Another carefully placed an unpaid snack on the counter and backed away from my expression. Cold rain blew through the missing entrance. I shut off the alarm, moved everyone away from the glass, and checked for injuries. Nobody had more than a scrape. The upper frame was bent, the security sensor was dead, and discount drinks lay under glass. Outside, the minotaur stared at the metal frame hanging from his horn. He blinked at the store like the building had attacked first, then wandered into the rain. I called Holly. A goblin on her route was demanding a fourth payment card while an older customer started a separate war over line position. Holly covered the phone. Everyone stop shouting or this register closes. The voices dropped just enough for Holly to return to me. Tell me nobody's bleeding. Nobody's bleeding. The door has left this world. Holly asked. What hit it? A minotaur with zero respect for hinges. Holly told me to clear the glass and cover the opening. The broken frame made one limit painfully obvious. My anti-magic could purify dragon material. It could not stop a drunk body moving at full speed. A sober kobold held the trash bag. The former bottle singer used a broom. The harpy's friends found her missing shoe beneath the chip rack and dragged her outside before she declared it royal property. Friday had finally produced teamwork because nobody wanted glass in their shoes. I taped flattened cardboard across the doorway and wrote, "Open across it." One elf studied the patch. Did the store lose a fight with a box? The box showed up for work. When Holly called again, her voice had gone rough. Your anti-magic won't stop a minotaur or an overwhelming spell. I'm making you a safety tool. She never blamed me for the damage. She worried about the clerk who had been standing behind the door. By dawn, the party had thinned. The harpy paid for her drink and the crushed chips. I was sweeping the last glass powder when a middle-aged man stepped through the cardboard gap. He had dark hair, short wolf ears, and a scar crossing one large hand. His coat was plain. His movements were careful. He bought cigarettes, thanked me, and asked whether he could wait inside while checking a driving service app. The calm customer was Garrick Boone, a werewolf working as an on-call driver. At that moment, he was simply the first peaceful customer I had met all night. Stay as long as you need, I told him. Garrick glanced at the cardboard door. Busy shift? One normal shift keeps avoiding me. He looked at the glass bin. Normal saw the entrance and kept driving. I liked him immediately. Garrick stood near the window and checked his phone. He never raised his voice or opened a product before paying. Romantic guidance and purification work never entered the conversation. He even folded the receipt before putting it in his pocket. Garrick kept clear of the register line and stepped aside whenever another customer needed the space. Friday had lowered my standards so far that basic courtesy impressed me. I kept glancing at him until Garrick noticed. Something wrong? He asked. You paid, waited quietly, and have not threatened the staff. He looked toward the singing customers leaving outside. Rough night. Historic. I had forgotten customers could behave like that. Naturally, trouble arrived outside while he was waiting. Metal slammed against metal. 2 vehicles had collided in front of the store. An orc driver climbed out of each one, and both began shouting before checking the damage. A small kobold driver was trapped behind them. His car could not move around the wrecks, and his face had gone pale beneath the fur. The orc stepped into the road and started shoving. Customers gathered at the broken entrance. Nobody could park. Nobody could enter. Friday had found a way to damage sales after sunrise. I stepped outside and asked them to move the vehicles. The larger orc pointed at the crushed bumper. He pays first. The other orc shoved him again. You crossed the line. They cared more about winning blame than clearing traffic. The frightened kobold called from his car, asking them to move. Neither listened. Garrick put away his phone. Gentlemen, he called through the opening, move the cars. Exchange information after the road is clear. Both orcs turned. The larger one looked at Garrick's gray-streaked hair and laughed. Go back inside, old dog. Garrick's expression did not change. The second orc added, drivers wait for orders. Nobody ordered you. Garrick pointed once toward the trapped kobold's car. Move the vehicles. Nobody needs to fight over a bumper. The larger orc looked at Garrick's scarred hand, then at his gray-streaked hair. He chose the age and ignored the scar. You get one warning, old dog. Walk away. One customer behind me stopped filming and lowered his phone. A woman near the coffee machine whispered that the orcs should leave the werewolf alone. They ignored the warning they could actually hear. The larger orc marched toward Garrick and raised one fist. Garrick hit him once. The punch landed beneath the jaw. His feet left the ground, and he dropped beside his own front tire. Everyone at the entrance went silent. The customer who had been filming checked his screen and realized his thumb had covered half the punch. He lifted the phone again, but he also moved several steps behind me. The woman near the coffee machine put her cup on the floor and started clearing space around the trapped kobold's car. Before the second orc moved, the witnesses had already decided who controlled the street. The frightened kobold driver opened his car door, then froze halfway out. The second orc stared at his unconscious friend and charged anyway. Garrick shifted one step. The orc's fist passed his shoulder. Garrick drove a precise heel into the back of the orc's knee, turned with him, and kicked once beneath the ribs. The second orc folded onto the pavement. Garrick adjusted his sleeve and looked at the kobold driver. Call the police and your insurer, he said. Stay in the car until they arrive. The kobold nodded so hard his ears shook. 2 customers who had treated the crash like free entertainment began moving the fallen orc away from the road. The woman near the coffee machine stepped outside to guide traffic around the wreck. I stared at Garrick. You said you were a driver. I am, he replied. I looked at the 2 unconscious orcs. You skipped several items on the resume. Garrick glanced at the scar on his hand. Retirement makes a resume shorter. His retirement answer explained nothing. The scars and the missing years stayed his. The larger orc groaned and tried to rise. Garrick looked at him once. The orc reconsidered and stayed down. That customer started filming again, this time from a respectful distance. Meanwhile, the woman guiding traffic told the second orc to move his vehicle when he woke. Nobody expected an argument now. The frightened kobold finally stepped out of his car. He bowed to Garrick, then thanked me for calling attention to the blocked road. His hands still shook while he dialed for help. Garrick checked both orcs for breathing before returning to the store. His violence had been precise, and his concern arrived without performance. Police arrived after the danger had already ended. They checked the unconscious orcs, took the frightened kobold's account, and reopened the lane. Garrick returned to the store and paid for another coffee. I asked whether he took calls for drunk customers. When the app sends them, he replied. I explained that Wayfarer Market collected more intoxicated species than a reasonable building should survive. He handed me a worn driver card with his number. Call if somebody needs a ride, Garrick said. Call sooner if they start breaking things. I looked at the cardboard doorway. That advice arrived late. He almost smiled. The card went into my wallet beside Orson's factory card. One ordinary bike repair and one ruined Friday had given me 2 allies with very different skill sets. Garrick noticed the factory card beside his. You collect unusual customers. They collect me first. He tapped his own number. Use it before the next argument reaches the glass. The doorway behind us was still cardboard, so neither of us pretended that advice was theoretical. Garrick's phone chimed. He accepted a fare, nodded goodbye, and walked through the opening. The road cleared. Customers started coming back. The store had a broken door, a promised safety tool, and a werewolf's number. I thought the next peaceful customer might finally let me breathe. The next customer would leave his dog on my counter as collateral. After sunrise at Wayfarer Market, a pufferfish customer arrived with a small dog tucked under one arm. He bought snacks, tapped his card, and received a decline. The register beeped again. Declined! The pufferfish checked his pockets as if another bank account might be hiding there. Then he placed the dog on the counter. Hold him, the customer told me. I'll get cash from home. 10 minutes. I stared at the dog. The dog stared at me. Sir, pets aren't collateral. The pufferfish puffed his cheeks. He proves I'll return. I told him to leave the products and take the dog. He promised his home was nearby and pushed the shopping bag toward me. Then he hurried through the cardboard doorway before I could hand the animal back. The dog wore a tight leather collar. He sat very still beside the register and watched the entrance. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I gave him water and scratched behind one ear. Your owner is irresponsible, I muttered. The dog answered, yes. My hand stopped. The dog looked up at me. Please, don't shout. I checked the aisles. A customer near the freezer kept browsing. Nobody else reacted. You can talk, I whispered. I can, the dog replied. My name is Pip. He spoke carefully, like every word had to pass through fear first. Pip explained that his owner knew he could talk. The owner demanded silence in public and threatened punishment whenever Pip spoke without permission. He says people will think I'm strange, Pip told me. Am I strange? I crouched so we were eye level. You're a talking dog in a store that sells blood bags. Strange has competition. Pip's ears lifted a little. He asked why I was not frightened. I pointed toward the broken doorway. A minotaur entered through the glass last night. My standards moved. Pip looked at the cardboard and seemed to accept that. Then Pip told me what home was like. His owner used him as collateral whenever money failed. The man and his wife fought about keeping him. If Pip spoke in public, the owner threatened him until silence became the price of staying housed. Pip wanted to leave, but he had no money, no safe bed, and nobody else he trusted. You are allowed to want freedom, I said. Walking into the street with nothing can still get you hurt. Tell him the truth first. Pip stared at the doorway. Do people change after hearing it? Sometimes, usually after the truth costs them something. Then he asked, what does neutering mean? I gave him the plain answer. The procedure would stop him from ever having puppies. Pip shot to all 4 paws. My owner scheduled that for Monday. Monday? His voice jumped. I have 2 days. I haven't even decided whether I want puppies. His panic detonated. He asked whether Monday could be cancelled, whether the decision was permanent, and whether staying silent counted as permission. His paws kept slipping because he could not stop turning between the door and me. He never asked me, Pip said. I haven't decided whether I want a family. Then tell him you object, today. Pip looked at the collar around his neck. If I stay silent, he'll decide everything forever. I warned him once. Leaving means no food, no shelter, and people who may value your voice for the wrong reason. Pip took one breath. I still choose to leave. One last conversation, then I go. I made sure he was looking at the doorway instead of me. Say the choice again. Pip kept his eyes on the exit. I choose to leave. I asked whether he wanted the collar off. Yes. I unclipped it. The collar dropped onto the counter. Pip stepped around it as though the leather had become heavier the moment it stopped owning his position. He waited beside the door. I left the collar on the counter where his owner would have to see it. The pufferfish owner returned almost 40 minutes after leaving. He carried cash and smelled like he had stopped somewhere else first. He tossed the bills onto the counter. Give him back. Pip moved to the edge of the register. The owner reached for him. Pip spoke loudly. Where did you go? The pufferfish froze. A customer at the freezer turned around. Another man waiting near the coffee machine lowered his cup. The owner forced a laugh. Stop that. We talked about this. Pip sniffed the air. You said you were going straight home. You didn't. The owner glanced toward the windows. I had an errand. You left me here because I was useful as payment, Pip replied. Then you took your time because you expected me to stay silent. The man near the coffee machine looked down at the bills on the counter. The owner's excuse had just become visible to everyone. Pip asked about Monday. The owner's cheeks began to swell. That's for your own good. You didn't ask what I wanted, Pip replied. The pufferfish looked at me. What did you tell him? I explained the word he asked about, I said. The rest came from how you treated him. The owner ordered Pip into his arms. Pip backed away. You leave me as payment, Pip said. You threaten me when I speak and decide what happens to my body. I don't want to live with you anymore. The man near the coffee machine set his cup down. Beside him, the freezer customer cleared the route to the door. Their movement left the owner facing an open doorway and a collar beyond his reach. He tried softer words. Pip, come on, we're family. Pip looked at the collar on the counter. You only call me family when I disobey. The owner's cheeks deflated for 1 second. He pointed at the food, the house, and everything he claimed he had provided. Pip listened without moving closer. I know you fed me, Pip replied. I also know you leave me as payment and punish me for speaking. Both are true. The man opened his mouth, but the easy answer was gone. The witnesses had heard the whole list, and the collar sat on the counter between us. Pip faced him one last time. Goodbye. I hope you learn to ask before you decide another life belongs to you. The freezer customer opened the door for him. The man with the coffee moved the loose collar farther from the edge. That kept the owner from grabbing it and pretending the choice had never happened. Pip jumped down and walked toward the entrance. The pufferfish inflated until buttons snapped from his shirt. His clothes tore along one side as he chased after the dog. "Pip, wait!" Pip did not stop. They disappeared around the corner. I stood behind the counter with the empty collar in my hand. The freezer customer asked whether I should call someone. If Pip comes back asking for help, we help. That was all I knew. Pip had walked out by choice and his owner was following on foot. What happened beyond the corner remained out of sight. Later that morning, a bicycle bell rang outside. Maisie returned with a runny nose and a determined expression. She parked carefully, walked inside, and sneezed a small flame across the welcome mat. I stamped it out. "Good morning," Maisie said. "Your greeting is on fire." She sniffed. Another spark escaped her nose. Holly was still finishing her earlier route. I found the child-safe medicine she had approved for young dragons and checked the dose by phone. Maisie eyed the spoon. "It smells bad. The next treatment may smell worse." Her horns tilted back. "Is that true?" "It can become true if you keep negotiating." She swallowed the medicine. I gave her a small lollipop as the reward. Maisie broke it in half with one claw and handed me a piece. "Shared treatment," she declared. I accepted. Arguing with her payment system had already failed once. Maisie wanted to continue the Mother's Day picture. Her allowance could not cover more craft supplies before the holiday, and she still refused gifts from strangers. I pointed to the cheapest lollipops near the register. "Buy one when you visit. The craft materials stay here, and using the store scissors remains part of the purchase experience." Maisie considered the arrangement with deadly seriousness. "One lollipop buys one visit, and you share the lollipop. Store tax." She narrowed her eyes. "Your tax is large. Management is cruel." Maisie looked toward the back room where Holly was absent. "The ma'am?" "Exactly!" Holly called at that moment. "I put her on speaker." Maisie greeted her with, "Hello, ma'am." Holly made a wounded sound through the phone. The age crisis had survived another shift. While we sorted paper flowers, Maisie told me about her school and her mother's company nearby. She said she liked that I worked close enough to visit. I warned her that I might not keep a temporary job forever. Her hands stopped over the blue paper. Her mouth tightened, and I stopped joking. I told her I had no plan to leave soon. Then I reminded her that unknown adults could pretend to be kind. Maisie looked at the flower outlines and the medicine I had measured. Then she looked at the half lollipop on my side of the table. "You already did good things when nobody told you to," she said. "That makes you a good adult." I had been rejected, ignored, and treated as disposable for 6 months. A dragon child gave me a better performance review than my old company ever had. I kept that answer to myself and helped her finish another row of petals. Maisie left for school after the medicine cooled her fire sneezes. That evening, Holly arrived through the cardboard door looking exhausted. Her hair was tied badly, and dark circles sat beneath her eyes. She placed a customized smartphone in my hand. "Your safety tool," Holly said. The phone contained a rare magic stone. Defensive spells could trigger automatically. A translation app could read local writing. A restoration app could return a non-living object to a selected earlier state. Holly had stayed awake building and testing it. I looked at her. "You did this after working both routes?" The Minotaur did not schedule the damage politely. Her voice stayed light. Her hands shook when she unlocked the app. I told Holly to sit down before she dropped the device she had stayed awake to build. She refused and pointed at the cardboard entrance. "Door first! Sleep after I know it works!" She had spent the night turning concern into something I could hold. The least I could do was follow the instructions without touching the wrong spell. We stood outside beside the broken entrance. Holly told me to select the moment before the impact. The phone projected a blue outline of the original glass door. I confirmed the image. Magic pulled the cardboard apart. Tape peeled away and rolled itself into a ball. Broken glass rose from the bins, flew across the sidewalk, and fitted into the frame piece by piece. Customers passing on the street stopped walking. One woman reread the repaired glass as if the door had personally lied to her. A delivery driver reached out, touched the smooth surface, and withdrew his hand with a low whistle. The frame straightened. The final crack sealed. Wayfarer Market had its door back. Holly leaned against the wall with relief. I turned the phone over in my palm. A rare magical device, built specifically for me, had erased Friday's biggest loss in under a minute. After the door returned, Holly gave me 4 limits before the new toy made me reckless. Restoration worked only on non-living objects. Every spell consumed data and charge. Complex formulas required focus. Automatic defense could intercept danger, but it could not make my body physically stronger. I asked whether the device could restore an injured creature. Holly shook her head. That brought Pitt back into the conversation. When I described his speech and departure, Holly's exhaustion vanished under alarm. Talking animals were classified as rare mystical creatures. Holly asked exactly which street Pip had taken and how far behind the owner had been. I gave her the route while making clear that I had not seen the final outcome. Holly warned that his owner might report him missing. Collectors could notice his speech, and strangers could offer safety with ugly intentions. Pip had crossed the doorway on his own. Holly's warning made me picture the first stranger who heard him speak before he found safety. A creature like Pip could be worth a fortune to anyone cruel enough to treat a person like merchandise. I gripped the phone harder. I had helped him leave. The street was still dangerous. The device could repair glass. It could not tell me whether Pip was safe. Rain started against the restored door that night. Bruno's silhouette appeared beneath an umbrella outside, carrying another promotional drink. Behind him, Kaya's Pegasus descended through the rain with a heart-shaped monster core she swore was already safe. Rain hammered Wayfarer Market's restored glass while Bruno fought with the umbrella stand. My angry office chihuahua dragged water across the clean floor, looked at the puddle, and blamed the store design. "This stand is too far from the door," he barked. "You carried the umbrella past it, because the sign is poorly placed." He moved the stand 6 inches, examined the result, and declared the whole entrance inefficient. I handed him a towel for the puddle. Bruno stared at it. "I'm a customer." "You're the customer who relocated the stand." He wiped the floor while muttering about service decline. That counted as progress. Bruno bought 2 cans of beer through another promotion, then he pushed the free can toward me. I folded my arms. "No." His ears flattened. "No what?" "No angry care package. I still have your toothpaste." I call that product feedback. This is inventory efficiency. He shoved the can closer. I asked why he kept buying promotions he did not want. Bruno looked toward the rain. "Weekend work. Sometimes 1 drink isn't enough, and sometimes 2 is too many. Stop asking personal questions while wearing an employee vest." Bruno had never come closer to admitting his job was grinding him down. I accepted the beer before he turned the moment into another dental lecture. Bruno took the receipt, inspected my checkout speed, and left without insulting the total. Bruno had set a new personal record. Kaya entered seconds later and caught me placing the can beneath the register. Holly's delivery and supplier sister arrived soaked from the Pegasus ride. The rain did nothing harmful to her appearance and several harmful things to my concentration. She pointed at the hidden beer. "Drinking on shift, receiving customer feedback." Kaya's grin widened. "You're learning our world quickly." I handed her a towel. She shook rain from her blue hair and leaned against the counter like she owned the next problem. The Pegasus waited beneath the awning, wings tucked against the storm. Kaya explained that she had once worked at Wayfarer Market. Her employment ended after too many abusive customers discovered she solved complaints by imagining punches. "Imagining?" I asked. Kaya dried her hair. Holly intervened early, so the strongest Fairchild employee is the one who does not hit customers. "For now," Kaya replied. Holly called from another route and heard the last line. "Derek, do not encourage her." Kaya took the phone. "He appreciates honest customer service. You nearly punched customers." "They were abusive." I looked at Kaya. She looked back without blinking. The rivalry sat comfortably between us. She respected my patience. I respected that her patience came with an expiration warning. Then Kaya placed a sealed metal case on the counter. Inside sat a dark monster core shaped like a preserved heart. It was an industrial energy component from a larger materials order. The supplier claimed it had already been purified. Kaya wanted independent quality control after the dragon scale disaster. She asked me to touch it. I looked at the core. "Your last safe sample tried to eat my arm. This one is smaller. That changes nothing useful." Kaya reminded me Holly had spent the night making my phone. I could test 1 core to repay the effort. That got me. Holly's voice came through the phone. "You can refuse." Kaya looked at the device. "Your concern is ruining my persuasion." "Good." I set the phone beside the register, rolled up one sleeve, and told Kaya to open the case fully. She held the core with insulated tongs. The surface looked clean. Holly's detector showed no obvious contamination. A sealed report attached to the case carried the supplier certification. I ignored the document. The core had to survive contact. Kaya cleared the front aisle and moved a trash bin close. Her confidence was real, but she had learned from the scale. I extended 1 finger. The instant I touched it, the core exploded. Purple smoke punched across the counter and filled the store. The smell hit next. Sewage had acquired magic and chosen revenge. Kaya grabbed my shirt and dragged me outside. I snatched Holly's phone and pulled the door closed behind us before the smoke reached the street. A cracked piece of casing struck the doorframe behind us and dropped onto the sidewalk. Customers approaching the entrance stopped. One covered his nose and backed under the awning. Another took one look through the purple windows and crossed the road. A delivery customer tried to open the door, smelled the gap, and retreated so fast he left his umbrella behind. Business had shut down in less than 5 seconds. Kaya stared at the case in her tongs. The core inside had cracked open and turned partly gray. "They lied," she said. She called the supplier immediately. The person on the other end denied responsibility. Kaya described the explosion, the smoke, and the detector reading. The supplier suggested she had mishandled the sample. Kaya's voice became quiet. "You certified this core as fully purified. It reacted to a basic secondary check." The supplier repeated the denial. Kaya ended the call before her customer service history returned with fists. I used the restoration app to repair the scorched counter from outside. Blue light rewound the surface cracks, but the phone could not remove contaminated magical residue from the air. The store remained closed. Holly asked whether either of us was hurt. Kaya checked my hand. I checked her shoulder where the case had struck. Both of us were intact. The core had forced out one unstable layer under my touch. Whatever remained still needed controlled purification. A bicycle bell rang through the rain. Orson Gearhart stopped beneath the awning. He was the robot factory owner whose chain I had repaired. His blue eye lights scanned the purple smoke through the glass. Monster core contamination, Orson said. Severe. Kaya recognized his factory logo and asked what equipment he carried. Orson opened both forearms. Thin sensor prongs unfolded beside insulated tools. I process monster materials, he replied. Derek assisted me when my bicycle failed. I can return the favor. Kaya hesitated. Relying on a customer during a supplier crisis looked terrible. Then, another potential shopper smelled the air and left. Every minute closed cost the store money, so Kaya opened the door just wide enough for Orson and me to enter. She sealed it behind us. The smoke made my eyes water. Orson walked straight to the counter, placed the cracked core inside a containment ring, and began scanning. His fingers moved faster than human hands. White current passed through the gray surface. Purple residue boiled out in controlled threads instead of another blast. Kaya monitored the detector from the other side of the ring. I held the restoration phone ready in case the casing broke again. Orson's first scan made his eyelights narrow. Initial processing incomplete, he said. A stabilizing layer concealed deeper contamination. Derek's contact canceled that layer and expelled part of the residue. At least Orson waited until the core was contained before explaining it. Orson increased the current. The core vibrated. The containment ring flashed red once. Kaya tightened her grip on the tongs. Can it rupture? Yes, Orson replied. Kaya tightened the tongs. You could have led with that. Orson adjusted one sensor. You asked what equipment I carried. Orson's dry answer made Kaya glare, but she kept the tongs steady. Orson adjusted two prongs. The vibration slowed. Gray became pale blue, then white. His scanner chimed. The core had turned white. The white surface held while Orson reduced the current. No smoke returned. A customer watching through the glass knocked once, then gave us a cautious thumbs up. Kaya checked it once with Holly's detector. Clean. Orson rotated the white core once, then locked it in a fresh case. Kaya placed the supplier's certification beside the cracked shell. The promise and the product no longer matched. The first processor left a stabilizing layer over deeper contamination, Orson said. Derek's touch broke that layer. My equipment removed what remained. Kaya looked at the clean core and the certification beside it. They certified a dangerous product, blamed me, and lost our business, Orson said. Falling monster supply and rising purification costs had pushed weaker processors into shortcuts. Kaya turned to him. Can your factory handle regular orders at this quality? Yes, Orson replied. Kaya nodded. Send me your capacity and rates tonight. If they hold, you have our work. Orson's eyelights brightened. He extended one metal hand, and Kaya shook it over the core that had exposed her old supplier. His idle production lines had worked before the old processor finished, blaming everyone else. The bad processor lost the contract. Orson turned one bicycle repair into steady business. Beautiful. We reopened once Orson neutralized the smoke. The first customer stepped inside, sniffed once, and asked whether the sewer had been promoted to management. Temporary consultant, I replied. Kaya elbowed me while hiding a laugh. A second customer asked whether the explosion qualified for a discount. Kaya told him the danger had been free entertainment. He bought chips at full price. Holly called during the reopening. Her first question was whether either of us was hurt. Her second was how much of the counter needed restoration. Kaya leaned toward the phone. He's fine. The casing missed him. Good, Holly replied. The next test avoids throwing anything at his head. The sisters started arguing over whose test had caused the blast. I moved the clean core farther from my hand and stayed out of it. Orson packed his tools, then looked at me. The core had already begun a second purge before my equipment engaged. How did you trigger that without machinery? Kaya stepped between us. Confidential employee information. Orson accepted the boundary, but his eyelights stayed on my hand for one extra second. After he rode away, Kaya sent Holly the contract terms with the speed of someone who expected her decisions to stand. She added an excited note about how quickly my touch had exposed the lie. She had arrived as a delivery woman, diagnosed industrial contamination, fired a supplier, hired a factory, and blocked questions about me. The label was missing several pages. I asked whether delivery staff normally replaced major contractors before breakfast. Kaya folded her arms. Holly lets competent people solve expensive problems. I pointed at her. That answer avoided the noun. Kaya smiled. Your anti-magic avoided the safety certificate. We all have talents. She leaned on the counter. Only the attractive delivery workers get to stay mysterious. I shook my head. Professionally biased. Kaya straightened. You survived my hiring standards. Kaya left with the clean core. I finished wiping the last purple stain from the register. When I looked through the restored glass, Serena stood beneath the awning. She wore the clothes from a night out, looked miserable, and seemed too embarrassed to enter until I noticed her. After the core smoke cleared, Serena stood outside Wayfarer Market in club clothes. She looked like she had survived the hostage situation. I opened the door! She stepped inside without meeting my eyes. Her outfit was elegant, fitted, and very effective at deleting my next sentence. I recovered before staring became a workplace incident. Bad night? I asked. Serena gripped her purse. My senior coworker said I needed romantic experience. They took me to a club. That part sounded reasonable. The rest was a disaster. Her seniors pushed her onto the dance floor, laughed when she moved awkwardly, and vanished when strangers started surrounding her. One of them had demonstrated a dance Serena described as the mating distress of a squid. Serena had followed them because they worked beside her every day. The moment she stopped being entertaining, they left her alone. The room was packed with noise, alcohol, and strangers who noticed her horns. She moved toward the exit. Every few steps, another man blocked her to offer a drink or ask why a succubus looked nervous. She kept saying no and kept walking until she reached the street. Her coworkers never came after her. I needed a second after the squid image. The rest deserved no joke. Serena had tried following my advice. The attempt left her abandoned, embarrassed, and afraid to trust another suggestion. I stopped joking. Your seniors failed you, I told her. They took you somewhere uncomfortable and left you there. Her shoulders loosened slightly. Serena admitted that strangers kept approaching after the seniors disappeared. She could not tell who was safe, so she left before the room became worse. Good, I said. Leaving was the correct move. She looked toward the medicine shelf. Then how do people meet anyone? I held up Holly's phone. Carefully, we can build a profile and reject aggressively. Serena sat at the small counter by the window. I installed a dating app and asked basic questions while she answered like she was applying for a laboratory permit. Occupation, love potion employee. Goal, meet someone safely. Experience, none, admitted with visible pain. Hard boundary, no clubs arranged by prank-loving seniors. I asked whether she wanted to mention being a succubus. Serena looked at her horns. The photograph may reveal that. Strong deduction. She gave me a dry look. Good. Her confidence was coming back. The app required a photo. Serena straightened too much. Her smile became painfully formal. I took one picture and showed her. She looked like a beautiful woman being held against her will by a passport office. Delete it, she said. Immediately. I raised the phone again. Serena tried another pose. Her eyes tracked the camera instead of me. You're overthinking, I told her. You said the picture matters. It does. That's why you should stop looking like the app owes you money. Serena frowned at me. I kept the camera ready. There. That expression is real. You want me annoyed? I want you alive. Also, you're genuinely beautiful when you're not preparing testimony. Her frown broke. A warm, surprised smile replaced it. I took the photo! Serena realized what I had done and reached for the phone. Derek! I held it above the counter. Too late. Best picture wins. She leaned closer to grab it. Her wing brushed my arm. I had entered advanced coursework without taking the introductory class. I showed her the image. The smile looked natural. Her eyes looked softer because she had been reacting to me instead of performing for strangers. Serena stared at it for several seconds. She enlarged the picture, checked the smile, and looked at me over the top of the phone. That is what I look like when I am not trying? That is what you look like when you forget strangers are grading you. Her thumb stayed over the image. The club had made her feel watched. This picture had caught the moment she felt safe enough to laugh back. Keep that one, she whispered. The profile went live. A match appeared almost immediately. The man's picture showed another succubus covered in gold jewelry. Rings, chains, bracelets, decorative horns. The walking jewelry display had committed to one strategy and buried subtlety under it. A woman's hand remained cropped at the edge of his photo. His profile displayed luxury so loudly that the cropped hand became harder to ignore. I asked whether Serena trusted the picture. She shook her head. Serena recognized the app as one recommended by the same senior who pushed her into the club. The cropped hand, luxury pitch, and prank-loving senior gave me enough visible red flags. I deleted the match. Serena blinked. Shouldn't I speak to him first? You can choose your risks. This one arrived wearing somebody else's hand and your senior's sense of humor. She nodded. We adjusted the profile filters. Serena tilted her head. Would you survive your own standards? I pretended to inspect the phone. This app has no category for broke otherworld cashier. That was not an answer. Her confidence had recovered enough to attack. I asked what kind of man she actually wanted. No filter could answer that for her. Serena thought carefully. Someone who lets me admit every flaw, she said. When I am ashamed, he listens instead of laughing. She looked up. He would accept me while looking into my eyes. He would tell me the truth, even if neither of us had experience. I asked where she expected to find someone that specific. Serena ignored the app and looked at me. Perhaps in a place where I already admitted the worst first impression of my life. That narrows the search to one convenience store. Then the app may be unnecessary. The direct hit removed every clever answer I had prepared. She had described the man she wanted and pointed the description across my own counter. Then she waited to see whether I would run from it. Her gaze stayed on mine. The app sat forgotten between us. I could have pretended the description was vague. I also could have swallowed the register keys. Both options had similar dignity. That sounds specific, I said. Serena's cheeks warmed. I have been thinking. Dangerous hobby. You encouraged it. She smiled again, smaller this time. Serena reached over and locked the phone screen. Later, she said. She kept the app closed and held my gaze. I suddenly found the receipt printer extremely interesting. The bell rang before either of us answered the obvious question. Maisie rushed through the door carrying art supplies. She was early, excited, and moving faster than her short legs could negotiate. Her shoe caught on the mat. I caught her before she hit the floor. One moment, a succubus had described me as her ideal partner. The next, I was holding a tiny dragon child while customers turned us into a family portrait. A fishwoman near the register gasped. Your daughter is adorable. She's a customer, I replied. An older kobold offered Maisie ointment for her knee. Another customer handed her a wrapped treat. A woman by the freezer told me I had excellent father reflexes. Serena covered her mouth, clearly enjoying my collapse. Maisie looked at me. Why do they think you're my father? Public imagination is free and therefore overused. The fishwoman nodded toward the way Maisie was still clinging to my shirt. You two look close. Maisie considered that and hugged tighter. My defense lost another witness. I checked her knee. No injury. The customer still insisted on giving her small treats, and she thanked each one with formal precision. Maisie held up the ointment and asked whether daughters were required to use it. The older kobold told, her careful father's worried even when nothing was broken. He worries about everybody, Maisie replied. That answer silenced my correction and made the customers smile harder. Serena watched the exchange with the dating profile still open in her hand. Her expression softened before she locked the screen. Serena stood to leave. She glanced at Maisie, then at me. You are good with children, she said. Please don't add another filter to the profile. Her smile turned wicked for half a second. Too late. She left with the dating app closed and a reason to return. Maisie worried that her visits distracted me from work. I pointed at the Monday customers dragging through the aisles and asked her to greet them while I handled the line. The result was immediate. The hungover fishwoman bought coffee, medicine, and a snack after Maisie smiled at her. A tired elf added a drink. An office worker bought 2 pastries because Maisie recommended them. She hurried back. I helped? You just outsold the promotional display. Her horns brightened with pride. For the rest of the rush, Maisie became the unofficial store mascot. A pair of exhausted commuters entered together. Maisie recommended the pastry she liked. One bought coffee, and the other added a box for their office. They left discussing the little dragon at the register instead of complaining about Monday. One customer tried to tip her. She refused and pointed toward the shelves. You can buy something from Derek. He bought a drink he had not planned to buy. No gifts. Sales were allowed. The loophole was ruthless. Holly may put you on payroll, I warned. Maisie looked worried. Would I have to pay the store tax? I held up my half of the lollipop. Management always gets paid first. The fishwoman returned for a second coffee and asked whether Maisie's mother would visit. I corrected her again. Maisie pointed at the craft bag. He is helping with my mother's gift. The fishwoman's expression softened. My correction had strengthened the case against me. Maisie counted the treats customers had given her. She separated the small ones from one expensive package and placed the expensive gift behind the counter for Holly to judge later. Being popular did not make her mother's rule disappear. When the line cleared, we returned to the Mother's Day picture. Maisie chose a wide blue sky and a green flower field. One paper flower tore down the middle. She reached for the trash. I put the halves on opposite sides of the field. Now there are 2. That feels like cheating. Crafting uses retail promotion rules. She accepted the logic and made another split flower on purpose. A customer passing the table asked what we were building. Maisie covered the picture with both arms until I explained the gift was a surprise. The customer apologized and bought a lollipop without asking again. Maisie waited until he left, then uncovered the blue sky. The crooked flower from our first session stayed in the center. Maisie pressed it flat, then refused to replace it. It was the first, she said. It stays. My mother likes blue. Then the sky is doing its job. Maisie drew a small figure beside the flowers, erased it, and tried again. I did not ask whether it was her mother. The gift belonged to her. She added the petals saved from our first session while I trimmed the edges her claws could not manage. Then she held the picture at arm's length and moved one flower without hiding the crooked first piece. The picture still needed work, but it finally looked like one place instead of loose paper. Then the bell rang. A cat man entered with one cheap bag of chocolate. Maisie stopped moving as a dark ripple crossed her horns. She tugged my sleeve and whispered, Derek! His intent turned black. He planned something bad right now. The cat smiled politely and placed one cheap snack on the counter. Maisie said the cat customer's intent had turned black. The cat politely placed one bag of chocolate on my counter. Either Maisie had misread the moment, or the theft was hiding somewhere ordinary store security could not see. I scanned the chocolate. The customer paid. Nothing beeped. He smiled. Is there a problem? No problem, I replied. Enjoy the chocolate. He turned toward the exit. Dark magic curled around the wallet in his hand. I grabbed the mop and stepped into the aisle. The cat glanced back. Cleaning now? Sudden passion for floors. Maisie stayed beside the craft table. I motioned for her to remain there. The cat moved past the drink coolers. I followed, dragging the mop slowly enough to look ridiculous and fast enough to block the door. He had bought one item. His coat hung heavier than when he entered. I watched his hands. He reached for the wallet again. The dark ripple around it thickened. I caught his wrist. The cat's polite expression disappeared. Let go. Your wallet is interfering with the register, I said. I need to inspect it. That excuse was weak. His reaction made it useful. He pulled back hard. You have no right to touch my property. I kept hold of his wrist. Then open it yourself. A woman near the coffee machine stopped stirring her drink. A tired office worker in the snack aisle slowed his basket and watched. The cat noticed them. He raised his voice. I'll call the police. Then he turned toward the office worker and pointed at my hand on his wrist. Record this. This clerk is attacking a paying customer. The office worker lifted his phone. Facing the camera, the cat straightened. Sure, public attention would force me to release him. The woman by the coffee machine stayed near Maisie and watched the wallet instead. Perfect! The pocket dimension shoplifter had invited witnesses before the wallet opened. Proof still sat out of reach. My anti-magic reacted to enchanted objects, and touching an unknown tool could trigger another purple smoke disaster. The cat twisted away. My grip slipped. He tucked the wallet against his chest and stepped around me. I blocked him with the mop handle. Move, he warned. Open the wallet. His tail lashed behind him. The woman by the coffee machine stepped closer to Maisie. Beside her, the office worker put his basket down and freed both hands. The cat could see the room becoming less private. He tried a softer voice. Clerk, you are embarrassing yourself over a legal storage item. Then one look ends the embarrassment. He threatened to report the store for harassment. I told him Holly loved paperwork when it came with security footage. That part was a bluff. Holly hated paperwork. The camera above his head made the threat useful anyway. The cat took another step toward the exit. Maisie walked over. She looked up at him with wide eyes. May I see it too? The cat froze. His anger had prepared him for an adult clerk. One tiny dragon asking politely broke that defense. It's just a wallet, he muttered. Maisie held out both hands. Then it is safe to show. The woman by the coffee machine smiled at Maisie. Beside her, the office worker moved closer. The cat's ears reddened. He tried to hide the wallet behind his back, fumbled the edge of his coat, and dropped it. I reached first. The moment my fingers touched the leather, every enchantment inside failed. The wallet swelled and the cat's face lost all color. Put it down, he shouted. Too late. The seams burst. Bottles, snack boxes, medicine packets, batteries, razors, and half the travel-size shelf exploded across the floor. Products kept coming until a pile reached my knees. A frozen dinner hit the office worker's shoe. He looked at the package, then at the cat, and picked up his phone. The woman near the coffee machine stepped back and nearly dropped her cup. Her free hand went to Maisie's shoulder, pulling the child away from the product avalanche. Maisie pointed at the pile. That was the black intent. The pile proved Maisie had read him correctly. The cat backed into a shelf. Those aren't mine. I lifted the mop. Correct. They're ours. He glanced at the doorway. I moved between him and Maisie. The cat hissed and raised one clawed hand. I slammed the mop head onto the floor hard enough to crack the handle against the tile. Pick up your wallet, I told him. Leave the products. Never steal here again. He looked at the mop, then at the witnesses, then at the phone recording him beside the mountain of stolen goods. His magical confidence had spilled across aisle 3 with the batteries. He tried one final lie. The wallet was sold to me like this. Tell the police, I replied, after you leave my store. The cat bent to retrieve the torn leather. A shampoo bottle rolled beneath his hand. He jerked away as if the product itself had accused him. The office worker kept recording. I stepped aside just enough for the exit. Go. The cat ran. He almost slipped on the shampoo, recovered, and disappeared down the street while the office worker filmed his retreat. Mop justice had claimed its first conviction. Maisie rushed to my side. I checked her for scratches before touching anything else. The woman with the coffee thanked me for shielding the child. The office worker lowered his phone and offered to stay until Holly arrived. He also handed me the frozen dinner that had hit his shoe. I think this belongs to the freezer, he said. Everything belongs somewhere except the thief. We started separating cold products from dry goods. The woman kept Maisie behind the counter and turned sorting into a game so the child would stay clear of broken packages. Holly came through the door minutes later. She saw the product avalanche, the broken wallet seam on the floor, and the cracked mop handle. Her eyes closed. Derek, clean up, final boss, new phase. Holly opened one eye. Where's the customer? Retired from shopping here. Maisie stepped behind me when Holly approached. Holly stopped. I own the store. Why am I still losing this trust contest? Maisie peeked around my leg. You arrived after the danger. The office worker covered a laugh with a cough. The woman openly smiled. Holly took the hit with admirable silence. She examined the torn wallet and identified illegal spatial magic. The tool had stored stolen goods outside the normal space checked by the store alarm. My touch had disabled both concealment and movement spells at once. Holly looked at me sharply. I told her the magic had been easier to see than earlier enchantments. She passed the pink detector near my hand. Its reaction was louder and steadier than during orientation. Holly offered one cautious theory. Repeated exposure and use might be strengthening my anti-magic, much like repeated spellcasting strengthened a mage. She did not call it proven. The torn wallet and product pile made the change visible. Maisie had to leave for school before the police arrived. She made me promise to protect the craft project, and then waved at Holly from behind my shoulder. Holly waved back with the exhausted dignity of a manager defeated by a child twice. An elf officer arrived after the store was already ours again. She took 2 statements, watched the customer's video, and stared at the pile still covering aisle 3. Holly praised me in front of her. She said I had protected Maisie, recovered the inventory, and driven the thief out before he could threaten anyone else. Then Holly handed me Kaya's reward envelope. The office worker glanced from the cash to the broken mop. Does every clerk here carry one of those? Only management. Holly pointed at the snapped handle. Management is buying the replacement. Then I accept the promotion. After the witnesses left, Holly's manager expression finally cracked. If you ever decide to leave this job, she said, tell me first. I looked at the reward money and the product mountain we still had to shelve. Holly was the first boss who cared whether I came back. I like working here, I told her. I'm staying, you pay well, and you show up, both matter. Her shoulders lowered. She handed me a box and started sorting beside me before the relief became embarrassing. We worked for a minute without another speech. Then Holly found Bruno's toothpaste beneath the register. You kept it, she said. Evidence of customer aggression. Holly checked the opened flap. You use it? That would compromise the investigation. She laughed and passed me another box. Then the officer replayed the footage. Every spell failed when he touched the wallet, she said. Her attention moved to my hand. Holly stepped beside me. Illegal storage tools often carry unstable self-destruct enchantments. Contact may have triggered one. The cover was plausible, temporary, and better than explaining I came from another world. The officer watched the dark glow vanish beneath my fingers. Holly asked whether she had recovered modified storage tools before. That forced the conversation back onto the illegal wallet instead of my body. The officer admitted damaged spatial tools could fail unpredictably. She accepted Holly's explanation for the report, though suspicion stayed in her eyes. Before leaving, she rubbed both eyes. Holly noticed. How much are you sleeping? Enough, the officer replied. That answer means almost nothing. Holly offered a strawberry sleeping potion. The officer refused a gift during an active report, so Holly sold her the smallest bottle at regular price. I confirmed the potion worked. She left with evidence in one hand and sleep medicine in the other. Kaya arrived as the door closed, carrying a case of glowing talismans. Your anti-magic is getting harder to hide, Holly said. Kaya set the case beside the torn wallet. Then we get you licensed before somebody expensive decides you're free labor. She named the National Anti-Magic Specialist License. The credential would let Holly sponsor my work and reject outside requests. It would stop companies from cornering an unlicensed clerk with contracts he could not read. Kaya gave me the ugly version. A company could push dangerous purification work onto me and hide the terms behind local script. When its own material failed, the company could blame the magicless cashier. The license gave Holly a legal shield to block that stunt before it reached my hands. Kaya said anti-magic itself was not unique. Mine was strong enough to attract expensive curiosity. To protect my origin, Holly would list me as a human from a remote island with missing records and no formal training. The protected version of a warning label, Kaya said. Holly added. It gives me legal ground to say no for you. It doesn't give me ownership of your power. I touched one talisman. Its glow died instantly. Kaya yanked the case away. And that's why the practical test exists. The written test measured whether I could notice magical interference. The practical test demanded that I cancel one dangerous effect without destroying every useful spell nearby. Hospitals, trains, and industrial machines could stack several enchantments on the same system. Raw cancellation could stop a curse and kill the safety spell beside it. So the first test rewards my bad habit, I said. The second punishes it. Kaya nodded. Correct. I hesitated. The exam meant stepping into fantasy society and letting officials measure a power I barely understood. Kaya lowered the case. Holly talks about you constantly. Holly entered from the back carrying food and nearly dropped the tray. Kaya, her sister kept going. She built your phone, covered your secret, asks whether you ate, and worries whether you got home. Very corporate. Holly's face turned red. I discussed staffing risks. I looked at the phone, the restored door, and the reward envelope. I'll take the exam. Holly pushed the food toward me and announced, paid preparation leave. Then she pinned a sensory charm to my jacket without letting it touch my skin. A second charm was supposed to reduce mental fatigue. I brushed one corner, and the ink vanished. Kaya pulled the remaining talismans away. He is eating the study materials. My body rejects bad teaching methods. Holly rescued the case and handed me the candidate notice. Kaya checked the date. Kaya's smile disappeared. The exam starts tomorrow at 9. I had no local training and one night to prepare. I expected the certification test to bury me in questions I could not read. The official page would scare me for the opposite reason. It looked far too easy. At sunrise, Holly moved Wayfarer Market beside the Crossroads Academy district because Kaya's deadline had left us no other option. The district had grown around a former castle. Students from several species crossed stone courtyards beneath modern signs. Trains powered by layered magic ran beyond the walls. This was my first time walking more than a few steps into the fantasy world without the store behind me. Holly stood in the doorway and handed me the customized phone. Translation is active, she said. The exam center is through the east gate. I'll collect you afterward. She attached one protective talisman to my jacket. The charm flickered, fought my anti-magic, and barely stayed lit. Holly pressed it flat. Try not to touch this directly. Strong start for a specialist exam. Holly looked me over once, adjusted the stubborn talisman, and tried to sound confident. Take the test before you invent a reason to fail it. I tried to look like a man who had studied. Both performances lacked funding. I crossed the courtyard while the store remained parked beside the district wall. The phone translated signs as I raised it, turning unfamiliar symbols into plain English. Candidates carried manuals, protective cases, and equipment I could not name. One woman practiced making a glowing field around her hands. A stone-skinned man reviewed diagrams of magical engines. I had slept for 3 hours and brought convenience store experience. The field around the woman's hands made the mismatch obvious. Inside the waiting hall, an ogre beside me held an older practice test covered in local script. I asked whether I could photograph it. The ogre shrugged. Study material does not wear out when someone takes a picture. He held the page steady while I used the translation app. Question 1 asked how to disable a magic bomb without triggering its pressure seal. Next came a high-voltage rescue around a rare monster. A third expected knowledge of layered transportation spells. I could not answer any of them confidently. I scrolled farther. A scenario involved rescuing passengers from a train while preserving the track enchantment. Another asked which type of monster core could survive direct cancellation. Every question assumed years of training in a world I had visited for several night shifts. The ogre noticed my face. First attempt, first morning in this district. He looked impressed for exactly the wrong reason. You must have trained somewhere remote, he said. That matched Holly's cover story, so I nodded without adding details. A horned candidate across from us overheard and asked what school taught anti-magic on a remote island. I pointed at the practice sheet. Apparently the school that forgot this entire subject. The ogre laughed. The horned candidate stayed silent. Then the ogre let me photograph a second page. It was worse. One scenario asked which enchantment to preserve during a bridge collapse. Another required identifying a curse from a description containing 6 words the translation app could barely simplify. The horned candidate beside us answered one from memory and corrected the ogre's formula. Both had studied for months. I asked how many candidates passed the written test on a first attempt. The ogre said enough to make failure embarrassing and few enough to make success valuable. The answer was useful and did nothing for my nerves. A wall clock moved toward 9. Candidates started packing their notes. Several touched protective charms before entering. Mine had already gone dark in my pocket. I considered calling Holly and withdrawing. Then I remembered the officer replaying the wallet footage and the way Kaya described outside companies. Failing honestly would still teach us where I stood. Avoiding the test would teach everyone nothing. My written exam was scheduled to start in minutes. I had raw anti-magic, a translation phone, and the academic preparation of a cashier who had spent the night fighting a wallet. By then, I expected to fail. A bell called us into the exam room. A severe red-haired proctor stood at the front. Conrad Reddick administered the National Anti-Magic Specialist License Test and looked personally offended by whispering. They gave us 60 minutes. One listening item came first, followed by multiple-choice questions. Cheating could damage future eligibility. Conrad kept the rules short because the consequences were heavy. Conrad ordered us to place communication devices inside sealed trays. I turned off Holly's phone and set it down. The protective talisman on my jacket went dark as I sat. Conrad noticed. Defective charm? He asked. It has performance anxiety. He did not appreciate the diagnosis. The exam began. A children's song played through the room. The lyrics followed an orc family preparing breakfast. One parent carried bowls. 2 children argued over fruit. A grandmother burned the toast. I waited for the hidden technical section. The song ended. Question 1 asked how many bowls appeared in the song. Next came 1 plus 1. A third asked which color had been named twice. I turned the page. A picture showed 3 animals and asked which one could fly. Around me, candidates gripped their heads. The ogre's pen moved slowly across his sheet. The horned woman at the next table stared at the page as though it contained funeral instructions. One candidate whispered a complex formula under his breath. I looked at my question about fruit. Every other candidate looked trapped in a different exam. I had to decide whether my easy page was the trap or the real test. I raised my hand. Conrad walked over. Problem? I kept my voice low. My questions look extremely simple. His expression remained cold. The problem may be your perception, candidate Vaughn. Answer what you see. Conrad had just made my concern sound like incompetence. I checked the page again. Basic arithmetic remained basic arithmetic. I answered it. The listening questions took 2 minutes. The rest looked like elementary school material. I finished in about 15 minutes and reviewed every answer twice. Nothing changed. The ogre beside me still worked through the first page. Sweat darkened his collar. A candidate near the window gripped her pencil until it cracked. I considered waiting to avoid looking suspicious. Then I remembered the rule. Answer what I saw. I submitted the paper. As I walked down the aisle, I saw that the ogre's page carried dense diagrams where mine showed fruit bowls. The horned candidate had covered both sides of her scratch paper with formulas. Neither noticed me looking. Conrad held my answer sheet beneath a scanning crystal. The crystal flashed once, then stayed clear. His mouth tightened when he saw the completion time. No changes after submission, he reminded me. Early submission is final. I understand. Conrad placed my sheet face down. A candidate near the door watched me leave and shook his head, clearly assuming I had surrendered. Outside, the attendant returned my phone and checked my candidate number twice because nobody else had finished. I walked into the courtyard convinced I had misunderstood the entire test. The translation app had worked on the practice sheet. The real exam was printed in the same script. Other candidates had clearly seen something difficult. I called Holly. She answered from behind the store counter. I described the children's song and the arithmetic question. Holly started laughing. She caught her breath. You found the base test. She explained the demonstrated rule in 2 sentences. Room magic overlaid difficult false questions and distorted perception. Candidates who noticed or canceled the spell saw the simple test beneath it. My anti-magic had stripped away the overlay before I knew it existed. The practice sheet had tested knowledge I lacked. Inside the room, the distortion spell itself was the test. I looked back through the exam center window. Conrad had implied I was the problem. Technically, he was right. I was the problem for the spell. Holly added that the design protected weak candidates from advancing into practical tests they could not control. Anti-magic specialists worked around trains, machines, and dangerous layered systems. Raw cancellation without perception could cause real damage. The practical test would demand the control I still lacked. For the moment, I had finished. I waited outside while the remaining candidates fought the full hour. Through the tall windows, I watched Conrad move between desks as the room spell pressed down. One candidate stopped to steady her breathing. The ogre kept writing until the final bell. Candidates emerged comparing bombs, monsters, and transit lines. Nobody mentioned fruit bowls. Conrad carried the sealed answer sheets out last and said results would follow verification. The others looked at me like I had failed fast enough to save lunch. One woman heard me mention the children's song and stared as though I had taken a different exam. She had. The ogre asked how many questions I had answered. All of them. He looked back at the exam center. Your remote island is terrifying. I wished him luck and kept Holly's cover intact. 2 bunny children sat on a low wall nearby, talking about classmates. I started eavesdropping when one mentioned the dragon child. The bunny girl said the dragon tried to join games but made the atmosphere freeze whenever she became nervous. The other child complained that everyone stopped talking around her. I thought about Maisie hiding behind me, her careful manners, and how much she enjoyed helping customers. There was no proof they meant her. Still, I leaned slightly closer. One bunny child turned. Mister, are you listening? I straightened. I was studying the wall. The wall offered no support. They moved farther away. My score was still unknown, and my social skills had already failed. The rumor stayed with me because Maisie thrived inside Wayfarer Market and might be struggling elsewhere. Suspicion was all I had. I could not turn 2 children's gossip into fact. That night, Holly moved Wayfarer Market back to my neighborhood route. I entered expecting the result later. Confetti exploded in my face. 1 strip stuck to my eyebrow. Holly left it there long enough to laugh before brushing it away. She held the official notice behind the counter. Perfect score, 1st place. Before I could enjoy the paper, Holly gave me the catch. Written rank proved I could see through magic. It proved nothing about selective control. Then Holly grabbed my shoulders. "You finished in 15 minutes. I was escaping the children's song." She laughed hard enough to lose the rest of her manager voice. Holly had spent the entire day insisting the easy questions were probably a good sign. The result finally let her admit how worried she had been. She held the notice up. My name sat at the top with every answer correct. Holly had circled the 15-minute completion time once, then added another circle while I watched. That was enough. I stopped hunting for a clerical error. Holly placed a glowing practice ball beside the result. Several spell layers moved inside it. "The written test rewarded your resistance," she said. "The practical test asks whether you can stop one layer without killing the rest." I looked from first place to the ball. "How difficult is that?" Holly opened a box filled with more of them. "Tomorrow, we find out whether first place can avoid destroying everything it touches." The celebration ended with one unopened box of practice balls on the counter. The first practice ball escaped Holly's barrier before the lesson began. It bounced off the ceiling, struck the freezer, and shot toward the front window. I caught it with both hands. Every enchantment died. The glowing ball turned black. I looked at the first place notice still taped behind the counter. My national ranking had survived one throw. Holly took the dead ball. It had carried movement, containment, and harmless light. My job was to remove movement and preserve the other two. On a train, erasing every layer could stop the danger and kill the brakes. Holly called the skill selective anti-magic. My current method selected everything. Attempts 2 through 9 changed speed, distance, layer order, and contact point. I touched with one finger. I caught from across the aisle. Holly even placed one ball directly in my palm. Every result went black. The 10th ball rolled across the counter. I pictured the harmless light staying alive and touched it with one finger. For half a second, the glow flickered beneath my skin. Then, it died. Holly circled the attempt. "You held the light." I dropped the corpse into the basket. "Please notify its family." Her coaching started calm. At attempt 12, she drew diagrams. By 20, the diagrams had arrows. After 30, she was pointing at the balls and ordering them to cooperate like difficult employees. The basket kept filling. By attempt 37, it looked like inventory from a store that sold failure by the dozen. Holly placed a harmless spell on my sleeve before the next throw. The sleeve spell survived because I consciously allowed it. The ball still turned black. My body could permit magic in one place and erase every layer in another. Between customers, the rhythm became catch, focus, black. Holly changed one variable at a time. I could feel the layers more clearly, but contact still made my body erase the whole structure. By attempt 42, my fingertips were numb. Holly ordered a break. I refused and launched that ball myself. It curved behind a shelf. I caught it from the blind side and felt one layer separate for half a breath. Then all three died. Holly grabbed my wrist. "You felt the split." For 1 second. Then the control exists. The black ball in my hand disagreed. Attempts 43 and 44 joined the pile. Attempt 45 carried a bright outer light around a hidden movement spell. I focused on the hidden pressure and caught it. The outer glow survived for one heartbeat. Holly saw it. Then, "It died again," she ordered. The next 4 balls went black. One nearly took out the cereal display before I caught it. My hearing for the spell layers improved. My hand still answered every difference with total silence. Attempt 50 died in my palm. The basket held 50 black balls. Only 3 usable ones remained. Holly locked the box before I could waste another. The basket handle bent under the failures, and my fingers barely felt the lid. First place had raised expectations. Layered infrastructure still made me dangerous. Holly turned the newest dead ball. The store teleported because you allowed it. The dragon scale survived because you wanted it preserved. I rubbed my numb fingers. My control only works when the alternative is homelessness or losing an arm. Holly nodded. Strong emotion may sharpen intent. Great, I'll schedule a crisis for the practical exam. Holly laughed, but the strain stayed around her eyes. We had spent 50 pieces of equipment for 2 heartbeats of progress. The last 3 would wait until we had a new idea. The entrance chime rang. Garrick Boone entered, the scarred werewolf driver who had flattened 2 orcs and then returned to ordinary life like nothing happened. His driving work had kept him away from this route for several days. He asked whether the store had survived without another door replacement. I told him the short answer was yes. The long answer involved a license exam, first place, and 50 dead training balls. Garrick bought cigarettes, accepted the receipt, and looked at the basket beneath the counter. The warm customer chat left his face when he saw 50 black spheres. New decoration? Garrick asked. I pointed at the basket. My national first place collection! He picked up one dead ball, then compared it with another beneath the store lights. The black surfaces showed no difference, but his expression said the failures did. Did any layers survive? I answered. Twice, less than a second. Garrick looked at my numb fingertips and the locked box. Then stop spending the last 3 until you can name what you felt before the collapse. Holly explained that I could feel separate layers, but my body answered all of them at once. Garrick listened longer than a normal customer should have. You've seen anti-magic specialists work, I said. Garrick nodded. A few, I asked. Any advice? Garrick replied. Raw resistance and controlled cancellation are different skills. I asked where he had learned that. Hospitals see complicated cases. His thumb brushed the scar disappearing beneath his cuff. I told him the layers felt like several voices speaking at once. I could hear the differences, but contact shut down the whole conversation. A specialist learns which voice carries danger, Garrick said. Strength only decides how complete the silence is. That beat 30 diagrams. I asked whether the hospital specialist had taught him. Garrick finally hesitated. I've watched treatment. Before I could press him, the door burst open. A pale woman rushed inside wearing a winter-colored dress. Frost gathered beneath every step. She grabbed the box of tissues and started crying so hard the air turned white. Ice spread across the tile. It climbed the freezer door, sealed the lower shelves, and crept around the counter legs. The temperature dropped so fast that every bottle in the front cooler fogged at once. Customers stopped browsing and looked for dry ground. The woman had entered for tissues. Her grief had turned the entire store into the next practical test before I had recovered from the last 50 failures. I stepped toward her. Ma'am, please breathe slowly, she tried. The next sob froze the tissue box solid. Garrick moved beside me. Garrick lowered his voice. Snow woman, their cold intensifies with emotion. Give her room. I moved customers toward the far aisle while Holly shut off the automatic door. One customer lifted his basket above the rising frost. Another abandoned his ice cream in a moment of understandable betrayal. The snow woman pressed both hands over her face. Her cold spread faster whenever she tried to apologize. Frost climbed a display of bottled water until the labels cracked. The automatic door froze halfway open, trapping wind and rain in the gap. Holly activated the counter barrier and moved 2 customers behind it. One customer left his basket on the floor because the handle had frozen to his glove. Another climbed onto the low ledge beside the coffee machine to keep his shoes out of the ice. Garrick approached without touching the snow woman. He lowered himself enough to meet her eyes and slid the tissue box across the ice. Breathe before you explain, he said. She tried. The temperature rose by a fraction. The cold weakened when she listened. Garrick was controlling the danger through her breathing. She lowered her hands enough to speak. He lied to me, she choked out. Garrick took an unfrozen tissue box from the top shelf and set it within her reach. Then he asked, who lied? The snow woman gripped the tissue box and answered Garrick. Her boyfriend had claimed overtime. She packed him a hot dinner and went to surprise him. Outside a movie theater, she saw him laughing beside a coworker. She called his name. The coworker kept holding his arm while he stammered that the evening was complicated. Then she mocked the snow woman's cold and asked why any man would stay with her. The snow woman shoved her. She shoved back. Ice spread across the sidewalk. Strangers scattered, and the boyfriend stood there. He did not follow when the snow woman ran. That hurt more than the lie. I want the truth from him, she said. I won't surrender because she embarrassed me. The tissue in her hand had frozen solid. She looked at the customers behind Holly's barrier and forced both hands open. Garrick kept his voice gentle. Confront the truth. Leave the store standing. Her breathing slowed. The ice stopped spreading. I cleared a dry path toward the door. The red car parked directly across the entrance. A striking red-haired woman stepped out. Heat rolled from her coat, turning rain into steam around her shoulders. The contrast would have been impressive from a safer building. She entered Wayfarer Market and looked straight at the snow woman. You ran fast, the firewoman said. The snow woman's hands tightened. I pointed toward the car. Move it, you're blocking the entrance. The firewoman barely glanced at me. Stay out of adult business, clerk. I pointed through the glass. Your adult business is blocking my customers. Move the car. She looked outside at the red car and then back at me. They can wait. The office worker behind the barrier held up his basket and said he had already waited through one freezing breakdown. The firewoman turned her back on him. She had followed her rival into a public store and blocked the only exit with a bright red car. She still expected every stranger to pause life for her victory speech. I walked to the edge of the dry path and pointed again. Move it now. The relationship can remain a disaster after my doorway works. The firewoman's jaw tightened. Heat lifted from her shoulders as she ignored the office worker's raised basket. She walked closer to the snow woman and claimed the boyfriend had complained for months about cold silences and constant doubt. She said he deserved somebody who could keep up with him. The snow woman demanded whether he had said that before or after the movie. She asked whether he had ended one relationship before starting another. Then she asked whether the firewoman had ever required him to say the word single. The firewoman's smile tightened. She answered with another insult about the snow woman's fear instead of one date or one direct promise from the man. I watched the heat around her shoulders climb. The rival had followed the snow woman to win the argument in public. The missing answer was making that victory harder to sell. Love is one, the firewoman declared. You lost! The snow woman stepped forward. Frost cracked beneath her heel. I moved between them again. He lied to both of you, I said. Destroy his evening, not my freezer. The firewoman finally looked at me fully. Heat rolled from her eyes to the tips of her hair. Clerk, move. Car first, fire second, relationship disaster somewhere else. She lifted one hand instead. A fireball formed above her palm. Holly moved customers farther behind the barrier. One office worker dropped his basket and backed into the drink cooler. Another customer pulled the frozen tissue box away before the ice trapped his shoes. Move yourself, she replied. Wrong clerk. Worst witness. The snow woman raised both arms. Ice gathered into a sharp wall beside her. Both women had stopped arguing about a cheating man and started preparing to destroy somebody else's workplace. Garrick walked forward. Put the spells down, he said. The firewoman looked at his gray-streaked hair and laughed. Another employee? Garrick's tone stayed flat. Driver! The snow woman shouted that she would settle the betrayal herself. Beside her, the firewoman fed more heat into the ball and told Garrick to move before he got burned. Behind the barrier, the office worker whispered that the old driver was about to get hurt. Holly did not answer. She had seen Garrick's posture. Garrick gave them one final warning. The clerk asked you to leave, he said. Take the argument outside before somebody gets hurt. The firewoman rolled the flame between her fingers. You think age makes you brave? Garrick looked at the fireball. No. That answer annoyed her more than a boast. The snow woman formed a second layer of ice around her arms. She told Garrick to stay out of a betrayal he did not understand. I understand charged spells in a crowded store, he replied. Holly addressed both women directly and warned that the defensive barrier would treat any launched spell as an attack. The firewoman laughed at the barrier. The snow woman stared only at her rival. One customer crouched behind the counter. The office worker who had complained about the car held his basket over his head like groceries could stop elemental warfare. Both women heard the warning, saw the witnesses, and kept loading their spells. Garrick crossed the distance before either spell launched. The snow woman turned her forming wall toward him. He stepped inside its edge before the ice hardened and struck 2 fingers against the side of her neck. Her knees folded. Garrick caught her shoulder and lowered her onto the dry strip. The unfinished wall shattered. The firewoman shouted and drove her arm forward. Garrick moved past the falling ice, redirected her wrist toward the ceiling, and struck beneath her jaw. The fireball collapsed into sparks. Holly's barrier swallowed them before they reached the customers. The firewoman dropped beside her rival. Behind the barrier, the office worker's basket slipped from his hands. The whole fight had lasted less time than the parking argument. Holly lowered the barrier and checked both women. Unconscious, stable. Nobody applauded. The spells had been too close. Garrick had ended the fight, but the red car still blocked the entrance and magical ice owned half the store. One normal shift, I muttered. Garrick glanced at me. You keep asking for rare products. Ice still covered the lower shelves and locked the freezer doors. Garrick stopped Holly from raising the temperature. One spell is holding it together. Heat may damage the inventory. Cancel the magic. I touched the frost with one finger. It cleared in a circle the size of a coin. The metal beneath stayed intact. That was enough. I pressed my palm to the counter and focused on one instruction: remove the ice spell, leave the store. Cold climbed my wrist. The frost retreated, then surged back once hard enough to whiten the coin-sized gap again. Holly asked whether I needed to stop. The last frozen shelf was still sealed. I held on. The spell ran across steel, glass, plastic, and tile as one continuous effect. I followed that effect and ignored the ordinary surfaces beneath it. The ice cracked. Water rushed across the floor. Shelf labels reappeared. The freezer light stayed on. Every package remained sealed. The office worker lifted one frozen dinner. Its wrapper and label were untouched. My fingers went numb, but I kept moving until the final ridge broke apart and the store was free. Garrick's calm expression finally changed. He studied the clean boundary. Strong! I flexed my hand. Strong enough to ruin 50 balls. This was one magical layer. I still can't preserve another spell touching it. Garrick glanced at the 3 unused practice balls, then at the water running from the shelves. That makes this easier, he said. Your control is real. You followed one effect across several objects and stopped where it stopped. Holly stepped closer. You know this field well. Garrick did not answer her. I asked the question I had been carrying since he recognized the practice balls. Can the anti-magic specialist you know teach me selective control? Garrick set his cigarette pack on the counter. Showing you is faster. He opened the cuff of his sleeve. Rain tapped against the restored glass. Holly said nothing. Garrick rolled up his sleeve. A chain encircled a magic circle mark on his wrist.